Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for February 8th, 2016. Phyllis, could we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Deborah Williams.
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli.
Here.
Rita Dozell.
Here.
Elia Gagoris.
Here.
Chris Hansen. Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Phil Sarton here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Anyone want to pull anything?
I want
Trustee
to,
Pennington?
is this the time to take something off the consent agenda?
Yes.
11D.
11D?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, motion to approve the agenda with changes. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Williams, second by Trustee Gagoris. All those in favor? Okay, passes unanimous. All right, next is reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start? Trustee Gagoris?
So we had a meeting just prior to this board meeting with OSAC. Nice dinner get together, and had a great discussion on their mission and their goals. And particularly of interest to me, and I think to the rest of the board, is their vision in terms of expanding in a rather expedited fashion the trail connections within the town boundaries. So I think we'll be working on that diligently, and hopefully this year we'll have some great news for the community. And also discuss their collaboration with ProStack in just being more united, and as they bring things before the board. So really appreciate all the hard work that they do. Also, I had a meeting with the Superior Youth Leadership Council this past Wednesday. They're working on a cyber senior program as a volunteer to go to a senior home and teach them how to work the computers, basically, or any kind of technical advice they can give in training. So I think right now it's scheduled for March the 12th. They're really excited about it, and but the biggest thing they're working on again is they took all the feedback from the board as far as the town flag is concerned, and they will be coming back to us with their final two designs based on the feedback they received from the board. So, and hopefully we will have that, Matt, I think maybe by first meeting in March, the latest, or maybe even at the next meeting, but within the month. And I guess the biggest thing is congratulations to the Denver Broncos. Yesterday, Super Bowl win. I mean, that's, and I don't know if the town of Superior always has a special day set aside every year for something. I don't know if we can do February 7th as Bronco Day, but if there's a formal or informal way to honor our 50th Super Bowl champs, but I would highly recommend it if there's somehow we can do that for this town. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Pennington?
Yes, attended the same OSAC meeting, have the same report as Elia. I wanted to reiterate on the buffer restoration, and Kendra, I'd like you to weigh in. You don't have to do it on the spot, but the fact is this has become a public issue, and I'm really, really uncomfortable with the restoration plans being a private matter that the developer will put into place and execute. I think since it's now in the public sphere, because of the mistakes that were made, it's got to be, I think we would be well advised to make it a public issue in which those residents affected can see the restoration plans as proposed, comment on them, and so we have no problems at the back end of disagreement.
Sure, and I'm not sure where the private came from, and it should be a public process as well. There's no, I mean, all the plans, they're public records, they're open to inspection at some point, and again, I'll defer to the town manager as to the process that's being used, but everything we do is public, so I definitely wouldn't advise that anything be private.
Well, I fear that the developer may just do whatever he wants to, in his opinion, restore it, and that will be unsatisfactory to the residents affected, and we will have a second phase of problems on our hands. So I really propose that we ask the developer to present those plans to the board and allow the public to attend to see what those plans are.
So, I mean, the plan would be to restore it to the pre-existing grade elevations.
Yeah, but
But
that's,
what does that mean,
I don't know
though?
what there is to review.
it's easier said than done. I'm in the middle of a major project in my house where they had to trench out, let's say, 10 feet of soil. And the recompaction of that 10 feet of soil was of major importance to the quality of the fix. So when you have to rebuild 70 feet, is that what we're talking about? The structural way in which that is done so that we don't have issues later on, I think is really significant. So I think to give these residents some confidence in the extent and the quality of the fix, we should require that the developer has to come forth and present their plans and their vision to the public and allow the public to respond at that time to make, I just want to avoid problems at the back end.
Just to be clear, you're not talking about the final development plan.
No.
Okay.
This is happening before the final development
yeah,
plan. Yeah. I'm talking, it's in the public domain. There are threatened lawsuits. I think we should nip this in the bud now and have a collaborative process to make sure everybody's happy with the proposed fix.
And I don't know if we can require the developer, but we can certainly insist that he does that. It's in the best interest of everyone involved to have that kind of transparency. It's not that it wouldn't be that hard. So I would second what Trustee Pennington's saying.
I think we did talk, though, about the fact that we can make conditions or requirements, so to speak, as a condition on plans that are coming before us, whether it's one that we're going to be talking about tonight or in future ones or whatever. So we do have that right to condition something with that, to say, this is what we'd like to see, and we'd have to know what it is that we want to look at.
Yeah, I guess I want to get away from the condition saying, what we really wanted you to present publicly to the residents and to us, what exactly that restoration looks like. Because restoring it back to its original is so vague to me. We never thought we would be here to begin with. So
Right.
to get back to where we thought we should have been to begin with, it's good to see it out on, if that's possible. And I think it's in his best interest to present in front of us.
But that could be a condition, what you
Well,
just said.
Yeah,
was
I
to-
guess we're playing
yeah.
with words. I don't want to
Right.
make it a condition or else, but the point is made.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure this is going to come up in our later agenda items, so why don't we not
Well,
get too much ahead
I
of
don't know
ourselves
that
there.
this was specific aspect of it. The buffer is going to come up, but this specific aspect may not come up. And I've mentioned it 2 other times, and it's sort of gone into the vague sphere. I just want to make it specific. And, I mean, how do we make sure it happens? So we don't have to decide at this minute that I don't want to let that one evaporate into thin air again. I did also attend a meeting of the Rocky Flats Nuclear Guardianship group with the legislative assistants for Senator Bennett and Representatives Polis and Perlmutter a couple of weeks ago. And we seem to be gaining some traction. What we're attempting to do is that before the refuge is open for public consumption, before any roadways are built on contaminated lands, that independent testing be done by qualified third parties like the National Academy of Sciences at a very high level to prove it's safe to be out there and to prove it's safe to unearth that soil. It's a long, long process, but that's the goal. And then I have a request on, and Deb, you might be addressing West Connect, although I think it's Alex in the technical group, about mention was made in something I read on a feasibility study and then a funding package that is being proposed to CDOT. This is getting this is getting press out there among the Rocky Flats opponents that this is just disguised Jefferson Parkway building. And so I would like to hear reports from either one of you on what, if anything, this has to do with the Jefferson Parkway. And that is all.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
Yes, and I will ask Alex to come up to the mic in a little bit here. I'll just give my other reports here quickly. I had a First Fridays last Friday. It was a very fun and robust meeting with lots of different people that came and went throughout the drop-in hours. And I also attended the Make It a Superior Night, which was a the Superior Youth Advisory Leadership Committee set up a night for the town for people to come in and discuss and go through a workshop in your New Year's resolutions. And so it was a great night. I really enjoyed it. It made me think about, normally I don't do New Year's resolutions, but it made me think about some changes I wanted to make in my life, and it was just a good evening, and I'm glad that they put it on. I will say that it wasn't extremely well attended, so I was a little miffed by why that occurred. So if Elia, when you go back to your group this week, it was last week. Okay, well, when you do talk to them, is that something that they want to continue with? Is there a reason why?
They are not going to continue it.
Okay, they didn't feel comfortable with it?
One and done. Huh?
Did they feel comfortable with it?
They did, but I think they were disappointed in the lack of, nobody really showed up, or not that many people showed up.
Yeah.
So for them, I think there are other things they're interested in doing that will have more participation, I guess.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yep.
Good. And then I just wanted to say with this West Connect Coalition, there has not been any meetings since November. And that is because the technical working group has been meeting regularly, pretty much regularly. And we are waiting for that group to make some decisions before our group meets again. So it's in limbo. I don't know what the status is on the technical working group, and I was going to ask Alex. And then I also wanted to state that I would like to have an alternate come to some of these meetings when we do have these meetings, because I am term limited and November will be new members. So you would like to do it, Sandy?
Yeah.
Great.
Does anybody else want to?
I think I'm listed as the alternate,
Oh, are you?
and so we probably should change that. I mean,
Okay.
if
That's a good idea.
because I think they are particular about who's
Okay.
attending on behalf of the town.
Very true.
So I'm happy to make that change
Okay.
if you want to do that.
Okay. Well, we haven't had any meetings, so.
Sure.
Alex Arenello, Director of Public Works. The technical working group has met several times since the steering committee met, and a scope of services was developed for a consultant to come on board. Interviews were conducted. A consultant was chosen, and there are being contracts being negotiated. They expect to have the consultant start working around March 1st. They're putting together a funding package. CDOT's contributing, I think, $1.6 million to this study, and the official members of West Connect are contributing the rest. Superior is an affiliate member, so we're not contributing any of that. As far as Jefferson Parkway and how it's being treated, this isn't a study about Jefferson Parkway, but the traffic studies will take into account whether Jefferson Parkway is built or not. So we know what the real focus is on state highways and what needs to be done, in the coming years to solve some of the problems in that corridor, 93 and C470 and so forth, and how it's influenced by. I mean, this isn't a study about Jefferson Parkway, but we need to know if it's not built, what are the ramifications? If it is built, what are the ramifications? So that's how it's being treated in the study.
And so far in this study, there is no public monies that will be spent on the Jefferson Parkway segment. Is that correct?
Other than getting
Local.
information from Jefferson Parkway to find out what their traffic numbers are, what the alignment is, so that could be plugged into the models.
But that's Jefferson Parkway's funding. They have to do that piece in
Right.
order to submit that to this group,
Right,
correct?
and- yeah.
Okay.
In parallel, apparently they have released an RFQ for some consultants, so it sounds like there is some activity over there.
Well, and they initiated a 1601 process, right, to
That-
connect into the state highway
That could
system?
be what's going on. We
Right.
haven't really discussed their specific activities,
Okay.
but it sounds like something may be happening over there.
And do you know how long that process is, that 1601 process? Is it-
Probably a year to 18 months.
Yeah, that's what I
it's not
thought,
a-
okay.
no.
And that's just literally a study, an environmental study to allow you to connect to each
State
point
highways.
of the state highway. It doesn't mean that you can build at that moment, and it doesn't mean you are building. It just means you have the go-ahead to build should you decide. Is that correct?
Similar to what we did, a 1601 study for the interchange, basically telling CDOT what changes we wanted to make, what the ramifications are, and get their approval of design standards, environmental clearances, all that, right at the connection, right at the connection point of where the Jefferson Parkway would connect to a state highway.
And do we know if they're actually, I assume they're actively seeking for funding, private funding. Do we know anything about that?
I don't know anything.
No. And so they're operating in tandem with this group, right? But on their own. Is that correct?
They're operating on their own. We're sharing information that would, help or not with each other's plans. So we just want to know what they're doing, because
Right.
if they don't build it, there are certain things we got to do. If they do
Right.
build it, there are other things. So we want to know what's going on with that.
But this feasibility, what concerns me about this funding package and this feasibility study, while our interchange was a developed interchange that needed enhancements, et cetera, so that is not a proper analogy to the Jefferson Parkway. The Jefferson Parkway is a concept, and it's been talked about for a long time, but it's not an established anything. It's a concept. And so the first part of your discussion that said the study's being done to consider whether or not any new roads and whatever are needed, including the Jefferson Parkway. This is what concerns me, is while ostensibly it's got to be privately funded, when it starts getting so much tied into a CDOT study of such major proportions, this is a several $million study, then all of a sudden it is in the public realm. So this is why I'm interested in it. It's a concept. It is not a road. It's a concept. And it's a privately funded concept that's now being cast into the public domain. So
Well, and
that's why I do want to get involved in this whole.
And I will say this, that the West Connect Coalition, which is the policy group that had the discussion, the biggest argument there was, well, everything that we're discussing on the whole corridor, the whole transportation mobility from one end to the other end on the northwest corridor is existing. That's what we're discussing, is what's existing roads. And this Jefferson Parkway is not an existing road. So that was an argument to keep it out of this planning and environmental linkage study that CDOT is going to do for the area. So we did agree on a build, and if either there's an alternative where we see if it's built and how it affects the whole corridor, and an alternative where we see how, if it's not built, what happens instead.
But is there the alternative if some corridor is built that achieves some traffic mitigation that isn't the Jefferson Parkway? You know, that is just one configuration that serves Arvada and that area well. The point is let's not adopt that as the fait accompli here. I can see
Okay,
Clint.
we need to move on.
There, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Is there
But we're on
anything else?
it,
Okay.
in other words.
Anything else?
And I'm, you
Okay.
can move on to the next.
Trustee
person.
Cirilli.
I also attended the dinner meeting with OSAC before this meeting. It was a good meeting. They have lots of good ideas that we're going to be working with them on in the future. The only meeting I attended since the last meeting I was at, because I was out of town for 10 days in January, was on February 1st, which was a Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting, which they elected new officers for the upcoming year. The new chair is Lisa Morzell, so I guess she's not term limited. No, she just got reelected. So, and we have the third quarter report from the Department of Energy on their monitoring of the site. I don't think anything of great significance came in that particular report. They started a presentation that's going to continue into the next meeting, which is April 4th, on the original landfill. And it's a special topic that we're looking at because the cap of that landfill is showing some breaches. And this was a landfill that was used between 1952 and 1968 for mostly construction debris and what else? Construction and debris, I guess. But it also had some amounts. They said small, but I don't know what amounts of waste and hazardous waste constituents in there. And it's this landfill in this particular time was established on a part of the land which is on the south side of Rocky Flats that is steep and unstable. And so the big debate was, and I think Woman's Creek goes alongside of it, and the big debate at the closure was what kind of cap should go on that landfill, and that's still being debated. And now that it's showing some weaknesses and breaches, they're studying, and they're going to have an engineer's report on what to do about this going forward. And I'm sure that's going to be a topic of great interest to those interested in Rocky Flats. And so stay tuned and come to the April 4th meeting.
I have a question. Does DOE and or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have a map of Rocky Flats where there is buried waste and materials? Do they have a map of where that all is?
I think
Is
so.
there any way we can get a copy of that?
It's probably on their website.
Okay,
So, but town can ask for that too.
okay. I think that would be a very good
A
idea.
lot of that was reconstructed through memory of retired workers, and they had stuff that was done in the 50s and 60s was not always well delineated. So they actually had a project to go out and interview and collect
Right.
information
Yeah.
from the old timers. And so I think some of that is reflected here.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Trustee Dizelle.
Yes, I attended the OSAC meeting dinner this evening too, and I appreciate all the detailed work that they're putting into their committee, and look forward to great things and expanded trails from that. I attended the first Friday with Mayor Pro Tem Williams, and I want to thank her for holding these because gives us an opportunity to have discussions with residents, and they can be free to talk longer than the few minutes or it's more of a dialogue that we can have. So it's really always fun to go to those on the first Friday of every month that Deb holds those. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, on January 27th, I went to a community-wide EcoPass meeting. This is a group that's been meeting for the past year, about every 2 months, exploring the feasibility of getting an EcoPass into every county resident's possession, and to be paid for with property tax increase. Boulder County did a survey, and the results showed under 50% support for a tax to support that pass program. So highest support was in Boulder, lowest was in Longmont, and East County was sort of in between. So the most likely path of this group is going to be to pursue something Boulder only, Boulder specific only. So I don't think we'll be seeing anything on the 2016 ballot relating to that. On February 3rd, I went to Metro Mayor's Caucus meeting, and the Colorado Municipal League representative gave us a presentation on a sales tax simplification measure that they're working on to make it easier for cities to adopt a standard sales tax definition letter and thus make it simpler for sales tax collection across the state among different municipalities. And issue of home rule versus statutory was brought up, and there were some good arguments made for being home rule in the sales tax collection realm. So this is something I'd like to perhaps explore in more detail as we go into further retreats, bringing up the home rule versus statutory discussion again. It's not a new discussion, it's just continuing discussion.
No, it's definitely not a new.
Also discussed was funding mechanisms for transportation improvements. That is now polling at the top of people's concern list. It's usually things about the economy, schools, healthcare, and transportation is polling very well right now. But there is still absolutely no appetite for a gas tax increase. It looks like some type of statewide sales tax increase might be something that might see on the ballot in the fall. On the 4th, I went to the US 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting, and we discussed the upcoming April lobbying trip that the group takes to Washington, D.C. each year. And the main asks for this year is probably going to be the asking for funding for Highway 119 bus rapid transit service Longmont to Boulder, and bi-directional I-25 express lanes to allow movement of HOV movement both directions on I-25 all day in both directions. State lobbyists gave us an update on our 2016 legislative session and bills that we should be watching. And I wanted to point out that in cooperation with the Chamber of Commerce, we've got a date for the mayor-manager update for Tuesday, April 12th at 12 noon, Rocky Mountain Fire Community Room, just like we did last year. And my final request is if you could turn the temperature down on the thermostat. Mayor Pro Tem Williams turned it up, and with a full room, we've now got it sufficiently warm in here. So, thank you. Okay, Town Manager.
The only thing I have is on the Remington Homes Coal Creek Crossing development, and we talked about it with Open Space Advisory Committee just earlier tonight. On the east-west trail, the north-south trail, what I'd prefer to do is just issue an administrative amendment rather than bring it back for board action, which I think if you're in agreement, I can just simply do, but I wanted to pose the question, and if you're in agreement, I can just do that administratively.
So you want to vote?
Just direction. I can bring it back for board action and discussion if you'd like.
My sense was that we didn't have all the committees in agreement on that, so
That's correct, yeah.
so we might want to look at that.
What's the timing on making a decision on that?
I mean, they're going to start with the landscaping improvements in the spring, and it would be coordinated with that contractor, so March, April, I guess.
Okay.
We would need to let them know for sure.
Okay. As I indicated in a message, you'd sent this out, a question on this out, and I'd be in favor of eliminating that north-south, or
East-west.
eliminating the east-west and going forward with the north-south as ProStac had recommended. Is that, and that
That
was
was-
staff's recommendation as well.
That was
so
that was staff's recommendation, yes.
I would give a head nod to that with the, and I think that's what you're asking is.
Yes.
Okay.
You've got a hand up.
I think there was some confusion, though, even in the OSAC meeting we just talked in, that how you connect to that and where it's connected, the north-south, I mean. And then when I looked at it, it connects off of, from the Remington property at the end of that one cul-de-sac, but it just didn't seem like it was a good place to terminate a trail or to start a trail. So I thought our discussion was that we weren't going to have any of the trails at this time, and we'd kind of see what evolved as we went forward. That was my understanding, that we weren't going to put either one in.
I completely agree with that.
Okay. And so that's what I would be nodding, saying
Yeah.
administratively, we're not going to put any trails in until we find a need and a better way to connect to that trail, because the Mayhofer Single Tree Trail kind of goes there, and that's what you're trying to connect to, but there's other ways to connect to it as well. And those are all the discussions we had, so that's what I thought we were pretty much
Okay.
moving in the path.
So can we ask Remington to defer any potential building of north-south? I agree on the east-west, until we see how social trails develop, and at that point, they build that out, if and when we ask them to?
I
I think they may be gone before that
Right,
happens.
and
Well, we can time our decision sometime before the development is finished. you
Before
know,
the end
that
of this
kind
year?
thing. I don't know. It's worth an ask.
Yeah, it's worth an ask, but I think the other thing to me is that we have open space trail monies available, and that's not a big connection that we'd be building, so we may, if we're saying delay it, it would be something that we might have to take on the responsibility for as a town.
I
Or the
agree,
open
I
space.
agree with you in principle, but I think it's worth an ask if we can, if we've got another year, let's take the benefit of another year. The other question, the other comment I make is that, and I didn't get to do this yet, but I intend to do it, I would hope that we would be respectful of the Kuffner property line, and that we try, certainly if we go ahead with building it, that we try to be a respectful distance from that property line. They were there first. I don't see with all that open space that we have to be on that fence. So if we can be respectful of the property line there, should we ever build north-south, I'd ask that.
So
Okay.
then we're
Okay, so-
generally in agreement, I think, that we're going to say no to any trails at the moment and see how best to develop that as we move forward in the future.
I'm not sure we're in agreement on what our head nod is.
Well, as I was just asking, is that what it is?
those-
I think we ought to
I mean,
nail
what
this
I-
down in another meeting.
what I'm taking from the discussion is, okay to move forward with an administrative amendment to remove the east-west trail, and
Yeah.
then see, through my discussions with the developer about the north-south trail.
Correct.
I could go with that.
Correct.
See whether or not we can defer a
Right,
decision on that.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, town attorney?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay, town clerk? All right. Okay, next is public comment. And we, just to clarify, we are going to have public comment specific to agenda item 14. If you're here to speak on agenda item 14, we're going to have a public comment session at that time. You can speak now, you can speak then, but just wanted to clarify that's what we would be doing we would have a specific public comment to agenda item 14, but it will probably be a good bit later tonight. So we'll go ahead with our public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items.
Hi, Sonia Critton, 685 East Wiggins Street. My topic is the 250-foot restoration of the buffer zone that we were all promised that was destroyed accidentally. My neighbors and I were ignored by the town staff as we complained about noise, pollution, and destruction of our promised 250-foot buffer zone. The violation of the grading plan caused significant harm to those who are contiguous and to residents who have now lost trust in the process and those who represent them. Because how do we do this in the future? We spent 20 years building this plan, and it was completely ruined. And as it was being ruined, we were trying to communicate with you, and we were ignored. So with the heavy machinery that was practically in our yards, some had to even leave their homes while this was going on. It was really terrible. And this is not a NIMBY issue. This could have been anybody's backyard. It was very careless. I'm saddened the Superior Town Attorney won't accept documents in a manner which is less dramatic and within the process which is acceptable. My notice of claim, which is not a lawsuit, it's a notice of claim my attorney said I have to file because we are in a municipality and we have a limited period of time to do so, sat at the post office after numerous attempts to serve the town for a month. It sat there time and time again. We had 3 other people whose notice of service was actually signed for, but the town attorney is saying they attempted to serve it in December. They attempted to. You signed for it. How is that attempted to? The other dozen people mailed it, thinking, well, we are members of the town. We are the citizens of the town. We are the town. Just like the members of a church are the people who sit in the pews. That's what the church is. It's not the manager. It's the people who are part of the town. They were ignored. The church is the members. The town is the citizens. Somehow that has been ignored completely. We are being told that if we're not a manager who might happen to live in Fort Collins, we don't count. Anyways, so tonight, I hope the town isn't piling on to the damage that has been caused to us as victims of this. And this debacle, which is costing us so much more with attorneys and fees and time and effort. I mean, I don't know, I guess yesterday was a football game, so let's call it pass interference. Why do you not accept a legal document which just says all we want is the right in the future, if you continue to ignore the law and continue to fail to do the reparations, why can't you accept a legal document? I mean, this is like, I feel like I'm running after O.J. Simpson for a month. It was a month that you were refusing to take these documents, really. Like, do we have to do that slow chase to try to get you guys to accept documents? Are you telling me you can't have, out of all these paid staff, not one of them can go over to the post office and accept a document? This is really shameful. It's very shameful. On a personal note, I want to thank Mayor Clint Folsom. He's been an honorable man. He has admitted that a mistake was made. He trusted his staff, and he trusted ranch capital. I appreciate Mayor Folsom's honesty. The last planning meeting presentation made it clear that no serious attempt at reparation is being made. And so trust has not yet been restored to the citizens of this town. The last planning board showed with a road going through the buffer zone that no serious attempt is being made for reparations. And they weren't even looking at the scale or the topography. You know, I went through topo maps in the Army as an Army officer, you know, et cetera. It's not that hard to read them, but apparently we need to get a professional engineering firm to look at this stuff who can help with assisting you in the reparations. In the past, we asked for a stop work order, which could have limited Superior's expenses for the reparation. You ignored us. We also asked for a public hearing regarding slope stabilization regarding the Superior Town Center. We asked that a professional engineer be involved. You ignored us. We asked that a Superior Urban Renewal Authority, SURA, prevent all disbursements until the wrongful incursion into the mandated 250-foot buffer zone is corrected. You ignored us. Finally, it is nice to have the town manager and the developer say that they will restore the buffer. But let's go through this. Who, what, when, why, how. How? Let's see the engineered plans by a professional engineer. With Superior's expansive soil issues and underground water issues, let us figure this out for future as well as current residents. You could have a huge health and safety issue on your hands if you think spraying grass seeds and planting a few trees will do it. Talk about the Flatirons Mall. You cannot just put lipstick on a pig. This is a big deal. You have to have a professional engineer look at this. And that is what we want to review, not some landscaping plans. When every single day since you have known about this is one more day of damage to the residents. Each and every day is a lack of mitigation of damages to those who might decide they want to sell their home. They can't. We're paying taxes on homes that maybe have huge issues with a depreciation. That's going to affect other homes in the neighborhood as depreciation because we're the benchmark. And then who? Okay, so
Okay.
RFPs.
We're over 5 minutes. We need to wrap it up, please.
Okay, well, you usually give the developer at least 30 minutes. Okay? So a professionally engineered plan, I want an RFP, RFA that is based upon a professionally engineered plan. So finally, no roads. I'll let other people talk about that. And Mayor Clint Folsom, again, I appreciate your honesty on this. At this time, I'd like to have you accept service on behalf of several of the residents of this town. Are you willing to accept service, legal service?
Okay, we have a town attorney here, and they
You
can
prefer
do that.
her to take?
I already accepted service.
You have? That's on behalf of me. We have multiple others.
Well, the statutory process has to be followed.
Right, and according to the attorneys that I've talked to, including the one who was the attorney for the county of Boulder for 20 years,
Okay,
is that we should serve you. Are you willing to accept service?
No, we have a town attorney. We're in public comment. We're not in service, okay?
You can, Kendra, are you willing to
this
accept
can be
service on
dealt with-
behalf of the mayor?
I will accept service on behalf of the town. I don't accept service on behalf of the mayor.
The mayor and Matt Magley are the ones who are named. Are you willing to accept service on their behalf?
Again, I'm going to need to see the document. The statute specifies a very specific process for service of notices of claim upon the governing body of the town, not the mayor, not the manager. So it's up to I will.
The
accept.
attorney has said we
Okay,
need to attempt
we need
service
to
on.
we need to move on to public
Okay,
comment.
So please.
Let's move on to public comment. Additional public comment.
Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Go ahead.
No.
Hold on. He's
Joseph Eckes, 705 East Wiggin Street. I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and my father. And if you recall, prior to the approval of the town center, I remember being really involved in all this. And there's a lot going on, and it's hard to keep up with all of it, right? So, but prior to the approval, me and my father spoke in our opposition and our concerns related to the town center, as it's called. It doesn't look like a town center, but that's what we're calling it. And despite our opposition and concerns, the town center was approved to be developed by Ranch Capital. And okay, so that was the decision that was made. Nonetheless, we were assured that there would be a 250-foot buffer zone starting at the barbed wire fence, or excuse me, the white fence, not the barbed wire fence. And that hasn't been fulfilled. And this is the same thing I came here before and talked to you guys about. And so I'm just wondering, when is that going to be addressed and fixed? And if the developer is allowed to violate certain agreements that have already been in place, where does it end? I think that we need to, and you guys as the town board need to establish that, hey, you're going to have to follow the rules here. And if you let them break the rules, then at what point then they're just going to do whatever they want. So those are my comments. I thank you for listening to what I have to say.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
My name is Pete Messimer. I'm actually here to speak on agenda item number 13, and if that's a better time to address it, then I'd be glad to wait.
We can do that if you'd like.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional public comment?
My name's Sam Benz. I'm here representing my wife. We're original owners at 927 East Carville Place, and we're concerned about the town center development. My neighbors and I were present when the annexation agreement for that property was put in place, and I'd urge the board to make corrections or amendments to the development plan to make sure that annexation agreement is fully fulfilled. Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
My name is William Leipold, again. My property is Lot 1, Plot 1, Rock Creek Ranch. I am the senior resident of Waterford since 1992. And I am disappointed and irked that I'm having to address this same subject again with you folks. Clearly, it seems as though everyone is cognizant that we got duped by the developer. That notwithstanding, Mayor Folsom, Mr. Magley, you are responsible for the actions of your town, of my town, and I expect you to fulfill them. I'm starting to feel like I'm in Flint, okay? There is no excuse for abdicating your moral responsibilities. Frankly, I've made bigger mistakes than this, okay? I understand mistakes happen. You have to take responsibility for them, and you have to deal with them. So I expect that the buffer zone will be returned to its original, as previous pristine condition, and in a timely fashion. And why I have to be here again addressing the same issue is disturbing to me. Thank you.
Additional public comment? Additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to presentations. Item number 10, Superior Chamber of Commerce update.
Good evening. Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce, and one of the fun roles we have at the Chamber is welcoming new businesses to our community, and hopefully a few people have noticed Superior Learning Academy has just opened their doors across from the fantastic park just south of Super Target, and we have had the honor of doing a ribbon cutting, so I am officially extending that offer, and welcome to all of you that sit here as our leadership as well as the public to join us on February 24th at 1 p.m. to help us celebrate that ribbon cutting. The owner, Wendy Shields, is a local resident and very well known in the world of preschool and teaching the little ones in our community, so she is ecstatic to have this new space, and once you see it, you will see why. So I wanted to go ahead and let you know that we will do the ribbon cutting on February 24th. That's all.
Great, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is item number 11, the consent agenda, and item number 11D has been pulled. Do we want to go ahead and approve the...
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Consent agenda.
I second that.
A through C. We have a motion by Trustee Gagora, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. And looks like we can just do a straight vote on this. Okay, all those in favor?
I just say the approval of the minutes on January 25th. I would not be voting on that, but otherwise.
Okay, it was unanimous with the comment by Trustee Sorelli. Okay, now 11D. Trustee Pennington or Mayor Pro Tem Williams? Trustee Pennington?
No.
Deborah
sorry.
can start.
No, you can start.
Okay. My concern about this totally has to do with whether or not it's appropriate for the $200,000 for the FDP work to come out of the capital improvement program, which is a general fund, rather than the TIP. As I read your memo, Kendra, it was unclear to me. I understand that the design costs are the town's responsibility, but to me the FDP is at least as much a construction document as a design document. I remember specifically in the rush to get the design of those done, we were handing them off to the developer for the FDP process, and I continue to be alarmed that the FDP process then will be funded out of town funds rather than Superior Town Center funds. So I read your memo carefully, and I'm still confused as to why an FDP is a design document and not a necessary construction document.
As I said in my memo, it's not extremely clear in those agreements what there was no list. Here's what design is. Here's what construction is. So the design, as I typically review design documents, that includes the design of the project, but the design of the project goes, in this case, because it's a park, right back into the FDP. We can't design a park without an FDP, and we can't, so that's why those two are tied together in my mind.
Nor can we construct one without an FDP.
I agree, but you could, in theory, construct a park based on an old FDP. I'm just using this as a hypothetical.
But
right? So you don't have to have the
right.
FDP doesn't have to be contemporaneous with construction.
Yeah, I'm not talking contemporaneity.
Right.
I'm talking about it being as integral to construction
Mm-hmm.
and more integral to construction than it is to design.
Right, and I guess what I'm going off of is my memory of board discussions earlier that we wanted to keep control of that design, and I thought I heard through the FDP process. If that's incorrect, then we can go back and review that, but that's what I recall the board's wishes at the time to be, is that we control the FDP, and the way to control that FDP as the applicant is to pay for it, have the design done. That's what I recall. If that's incorrect, that's incorrect.
Well, I maintain that we retain ultimate control with a yes or no vote.
Of course you do. Yes,
And
I
so I cannot vote in favor of it coming out of the general fund rather than the Superior Town Center Fund from my read of all the documents. So that's why I had this one pulled, because this approval of this in the consent agenda is premised on taking it out of the general fund. So I'll turn it over to Deborah.
I also feel the same, and I wanted to understand these costs here are just for the design. They are not for the FDP process as well.
They're the same. Oh, I'm sorry.
They're one and the same?
They're the same.
Yep.
So this takes it from the beginning all the way to the end as an FDP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as I recall through the process, we were going to design the park, but then we were going to hand that over to the developer to put into an FDP and bring that forward. And one of the things that we were discussing through that whole process was timing. And timing was very important, that we needed to get our designs completed in time for the FDP to come forward. So in my mind, that's our job to go through that process so that we can give it over to the developer to finish the FDP when those come forward. I mean, we've been talking about it in terms of when those FDPs come forward, we need our design to be ready to go. So when I think that way, and this is not the process I was thinking we were going. And then the other concern that is it coming out of our general fund and not the TIF, because this is for the Superior Town Center. I mean, it's part of the FDP process for the town center. And we didn't give, 145 million over to then also take general funds to design part of this, town center. So that's my comments on this. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Rita?
Is that okay?
Go ahead.
I was not on this side of the table when all of this was discussed, but as I also read through the memo, the two things that seem to be kind of contradictory here are in the DIA, the developer agreement from March of 2013, that it said civic space will be up to 100,000 square feet of town hall, community recreation center, or library, and one or more multi-purpose athletic fields. No mention of parks. Then in October 18th of 2013, on the cost-sharing agreement, all of a sudden it says those same words, town hall, community recreation center, or library, and one or more public athletic fields, but also added was public park improvements. Don't know how that got thrown into the cost-sharing agreement. I don't remember that exactly. But then it goes on to say, excluding private improvements, contributions of land, park or open space required by the PD plan and our approved FDP. So then we got a contradiction. Now, are parks in or out, and what's a park improvement versus what isn't? Then we go down to Exhibit B, which says that public park amenities and facilities only would be paid out of the $4 million, which was allocated out of the $10 million for parks. So clearly, as our town attorney said, there's ambiguity here, but it also is very clear that the design was going to be something that we were going to have to shoulder. I draw a line in the park grass when we start talking about who pays for the park itself and who pays for the amenities and how they're paid for, the construction of that. Construction of a civic space was really tied to town hall, community recreation center, a library, and one or more multi-purpose athletic fields, which got, was part of that. So I think this whole idea of who builds and how they get built, and if we give a design, that's pretty much an FDP, which then should be handed over to the developer to.
Disagree entirely. A design is what we've already done. It was a process we did months ago. That design was handed over already. That's done. Now the FDP is made off that design, two separate elements.
Okay, so you're okay with the design that was done already?
We paid for it.
Yeah, I know
Yes.
we paid for it, but you're
That
comfortable
design
with that
was,
design?
Professionally presented. We didn't jerry-rig it.
Right.
It was professionally developed and presented. We approved it. It was paid for out of general fund monies. That's been done. I actually think it's an insult to say, okay, now we also pay for the FDP out of town funds. My read says, I go past ambiguity. My read is that that is a construction document and should be paid out at the tip. So that's my personal
I hear what you're
interpretation.
saying there, but I guess I'm not sure that I saw the, I thought the design that we looked at was a concept, but not definitive enough, like
It was
what's going to be
quite
planted
definitive.
and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as
my
being down to
distinction
the
is
landscaping.
We get to a point where we have a approved plan that we can give to the master developer and say, build off of this plan. What we've done previously, they would not be able to build off of that plan. I mean, they wouldn't be able to do construction off of that.
And we probably wouldn't like
The
it
town wanted to
when we
have
get back.
complete control over this process without any input from the developer on these parcels. It was important to us, and that was the other reason that I remember.
If that was the case, then there was a silly, arbitrary deadline, because we've had that design signed, sealed, and delivered for, what, a year? Months, lots of months anyway. That's been an established document. So if what we were doing is sending it back to ourselves, why this artificial wall there? It makes no sense. So I've already been clear in how I feel about it.
I see we're kind of split on how we're interpreting it, but I do think we need to move it to a vote. And so would somebody like to make a motion?
Mayor Folsom, you just debated that public comment, please.
We can do public comment? Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Kevin Ryan, West Torreys Peak. I'm not here this evening necessarily to speak on this, but my request would be that you continue to postpone this vote. I think there's a third set of documents that need to be looked at, which is the financing documents for the bondholders. So in December of 2014, through the Colorado Open Records Law, I got a copy of those documents and spent Christmas of 2014 looking at the 112-page document. Relooked at that document because I was with Trustee Pennington on, I do think this should be intellectually, emotionally, this should not come out of the general fund, right? We all got a promise, hey, that town center that's being built, the risk is not to the citizens that live in Superior right now for the TIF. The risk is really on the future residents. That was sort of the spirit of the promise. So I was surprised to hear about that a couple weeks ago. I did look at that document, and unfortunately I don't have it with me, and it's not available online. But that document is unambiguous, and we did tell the investors in those bonds that the design would be through the general fund, unfortunately. So that's I'm not sure, I haven't seen the memo, I don't know if it's open for public record, but that is what we told the shareholders, so I'd recommend you not vote on this evening. And perhaps
Kevin,
look
what
at
did
that
it say
document.
about an FDP?
It didn't say, but it did specific. There was a paragraph, and I have it on my notes at home, and I have a big binder, and I didn't realize. I frankly didn't realize you guys were talking about it tonight. So I don't think unless that was part of your analysis and consideration. I think that needs to be taken into consideration before you vote, because when I read it, it did make me frankly change my mind, saying if that's what you told the investors that went in on the bond, that the general fund would do the design of the parks, and I don't agree with that. I would not have agreed with it at the time, but the town did sign that, and so I think that to me is pretty unambiguous.
Let's not have back and
anyway,
forth here.
So
okay,
anyway, so my request,
comments.
thank you. So my request would be just defer and not vote and take a look at that document.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Any additional comments on this? Okay.
I'd like to make a comment that I'm not disputing that it does, in all these different documents, say that the town is responsible for the design costs. What I'm disputing here, and what it appears, and I asked the question, is this taking it all the way to the FDP process? And that is what I'm disputing. That is not what I thought we were agreeing on. I thought we were agreeing on doing the design and then giving the design to the developer to then take it when those FDPs come forward and slip it in. I mean, that's how I view it.
Okay. This was discussed at the last meeting. We continued it to this meeting, the consent agenda, so I put it to the board. I mean, do you want to vote on this or not?
I wasn't at the last meeting, and I didn't watch it. Confession. So,
You're not voting.
I think the citizen Ryan made great sense in deferring this, because I don't know what I'm voting for right now, and I don't want to vote.
What did you think you were what did you think this was? I mean, what was
I didn't know there was an issue associated with this.
Okay.
But did you think it was design, or did you think this was an FDP process?
Okay.
So any public improvements, along with private improvements, whether it's a building or street or whatever it might be, needs a final development plan before it can be constructed. This agreement would take the design of these two parcels, Parks 1 and 2 is what we're calling them, and the Coal Creek corridor on top of that to a final development plan phase, a final development plan. to bring to the planning commission, would be reviewed by the committees, and then ultimately the board for approval of the final development plans, which then would be, that's what we're talking about tonight.
Which has to be implemented, the final development plan, by the developer. So we're not constructing anything here. We're just, I would always be one of the first ones to say, make sure the money comes out of the right pot. But we did agree as a town to design these parks. And that's what I see we're doing here, because we got a concept before. We're going through the process. We got a concept. We always get a concept. That's
We
nothing.
got a design. We got a detailed design.
We didn't get a detailed landscaping design and everything that
We
would be
got a
required. And we didn't get Coal Creek Corridor included in there either.
We got a detailed design, which we paid how much for, Matt?
I don't have that.
In the range
I
of?
I don't know.
In the range,
I-
100,000?
I'm not going to say that's got
It
me
was
in trouble
not-
before. so
It was
I'm gonna
not,
speculate.
it was not insignificant. I mean, we're not talking $2,500.
Okay, I
That
think.
was designed.
Okay, at best, I think we're split on this, if
And-
not. And so.
And who's
my-
bringing this FDP forward? Is the town bringing an FDP forward on the Superior Town Center?
Yes.
That just doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
It's our property. It'll be.
It will
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
it will be
They're
eventually.
going to be our
And
parks.
all those streets will be our
Right.
property when it's deeded over, so.
It doesn't
But we're
matter
not
who
doing
brings it
FDPs on them.
forth, it's a construction document, in my opinion.
It's,
okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think what it's really come down to is the definition of what a design document is, and I agree with Mr. Ryan. Yes, that I don't believe the developer bonded to cover design documents. I think where we are is there was no definition anywhere of what a design document was. In my mind, an FTP is a design document, but I understand that it's not defined anywhere. So I think that's what we've come down to, and I don't know that additional time is going to change that. I can try to do some legal research as to what design means and what construction means. I'm not sure that's going to be all that helpful, but I'm happy to do that between now and the next meeting if that's what the board would like.
I'm just concerned that we're kicking a can down the road that should have been passed at the last meeting, and we should have designs underway, but we're haggling over definitions.
You can put it to a vote if you like.
Yeah.
You can.
Okay, make a motion. Somebody like to make a motion?
I don't have it in front of me. You have it in front of you. You can make a motion.
okay, well, I'm going to vote it down, but I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution Number R-10, Series 2016. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Matrix Design Group for design services.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Williams, second by Trustee Dozell. And we need a roll call vote, correct?
Zarelli?
No.
Dozell?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Gregoris?
Yes?
Pennington?
No.
Williams?
No.
As
Fails.
expected. Or fails.
Fails.
That ties fail, okay.
Right, a tie is a fail.
Okay,
Be nice to have some direction from the board on what you would like to do with these parks.
Wait for Trustee Hanson to return.
No, I
Let
think,
somebody-
here's a suggestion. Can I make a comment?
Sure.
The resolution was right. The resolution said in the wording, this is for design, which we've agreed to pay for, and I don't think the bond document, which I've read the 112 pages as well, has any, that's not the town's, that's not our bonding agreement, that's with the developer, with their bank. But it does say in there, per the cost-sharing agreement, that we as a town would design and pay for the design of the parks. Now, I never agreed to that when I sat back there as a resident when this was all happening, but it happened. It got put in the document, in the cost-sharing agreement. And so the question that we all have is, who pays for what in the parks as we construct them? We, as a town, supposedly have $4 million for amenities. No one's sure what that means. But it isn't necessarily construction of the park. Construction of the park, the actual moving the dirt and planting, putting the irrigation and planting the trees and that we've identified in the bushes, would be part of and incorporated into the FDP, which would be presented to us by the person who's, or the company that's, the group that's going to do it, which would be the developer, in my mind, and then it would get built by them. So we are doing too much of this back and forth over words. We said we're going to pay for the design. May not have been the right decision, but that's our decision. And so then, now we've come back and we've seen so many concept plans for so many parks. I'm not even sure what park we have or haven't seen so far. And this, to me, I thought was, for Parks 1 and 2, an incomplete, not constructible, if that's a word, design concept by Design Concepts. Holy buckets. So I think we're getting a little carried away here. We said we were going to pay for it. We may not agree that we should pay this much, but I think it's in our best interest as a town to get it right. And the design right, which is what we're paying for. And last meeting, we talked about, and I think I'm the one that wanted to add, to make sure we do the whole Coal Creek corridor in this design, because we're leaving that out. And I think it's important to make sure, and it got put in now. That's why we delayed it last meeting, so that we could come back here and make sure that the whole Coal Creek corridor and the what do you call that when you plant things and stuff like that? But, you know, revegetation, rehabilitation of that corridor was done at the same time that Parks 1 and 2 were done. And not, because the developer has nothing to do with the Coal Creek corridor, the floodplain. And they don't have any responsibility for that. We do. So I just think that we are kicking something down the road that we've already agreed we were going to do.
So the question is what?
Yeah.
Rita, obviously you feel that way. I could go on for 5 minutes as to why I think you're wrong and why I disagree.
Well, if you're happy with the design that's already there, then I'll vote for that one.
This is an honest disagreement. So,
but Sandy, I don't know what you want. You usually generally want a really good design for parks.
Okay,
So
let's.
it's which budget it comes out of.
Yeah.
Oh, you're only talking about the money now.
I'm talking the money.
But we're trying to give some direction to staff.
I've always
Clint.
talked about the money. The money
Yes,
should
what we're
not
gonna
come
do.
out of the general fund.
I guess bring it back. Bring it back when we've got a full board.
And I would appreciate
That's insulting.
Kevin sharing that.
Yeah, it is insulting.
But Sandy,
I'm
that's
sorry.
the document that
Are we
has
gonna
nothing to
have
do
no
with us.
parks?
It's a bonding one.
It's insulting that, you know.
It's
just-
insulting to have no
it's-
parks there.
well, So
when
bring
we
on
when we agreed to pay for
the
it.
person who's missing so that we can pass this. I mean, that's
Right.
just insulting.
There's a lot of institutional memory speaking here, and it needs to be respected, frankly.
It's not insulting to say the entire board needs to vote on something where the board is split. Otherwise, we would have had 6 board members forever and would be split forever. So that's why we have 7. We're not a full board,
I mean,
so
there's-
that's not an insult to anybody.
Well, there's at least three of us that agree, and there was 4 at one point, that we agree that there's an issue here. And to pass it with an issue is not a great
Well, I don't know
policy.
what the issue is. You just don't want the money coming out of the general
That's the
fund.
issue.
Is that correct?
No, that is the issue, though.
What's the issue?
Oh, I'm asking, is that the issue?
Yes.
That is the
That's how I
issue.
framed
Okay,
the issue.
Okay, now
We
let's back
already-
up.
No, you
That we
agreed.
did say we were going to pay for the
It's the issue.
design.
It's not the
And
design.
we did do the design, and if this is just finalizing that design and making it a more robust document, okay then, but we're talking about it's an FDP all the way down the line.
The issue is not
for
the design, not the design.
It's
just
where the money
money's
should
coming
come from.
That's the issue.
But have we completed the design?
Yes.
The design was completed months ago and paid
And
for.
actually, I'm looking at the design right here, right now.
And it includes a Coal Creek corridor.
You
Yes, it
added
does.
that after the fact, but it includes the Coal Creek corridor as defined up to that point.
Mayor, I'll suggest that we just table this, and my staff will go back and look at the documents, discuss possibilities, and if we come up with something, we'll bring it forward. If we don't, we'll just
As a-
have it tabled until.
As a point of clarity, the way we ended
come up
last
with the
meeting was
resolution for the
asking
board.
Kendra to prepare her memo. Kendra, our attorney, seasoned in municipal law, put the memo together and said, it is ambiguous, it's vague, it's open to interpretation. So here we are, doing exactly what was anticipated in her memo. We don't, there is no clear direction, so.
Okay. Well, it's just going to have to be tabled and come back, and hopefully we'll have some more better information. And
So, Mayor, may I have?
Yes.
I need to share something. Actually, I feel I've been sitting on it for about an hour, so I gotta speak my mind. So, normally, for those of you that I've known for a long time, I'm pretty easygoing, pretty laid back. I don't get riled very often, but every once in a while, there's something that's said publicly that breaches, the way we do business here. So, with all due respect to those that spoke in public comment, any insinuation that the town of Superior is anywhere close to Flint, Michigan, is inaccurate, it's wrong, and it's an absurd statement. If the mistakes have been made, and clearly they have been made, we're doing what we can to remedy those mistakes. So, in any insinuation that either the mayor, the board, the town manager, or our attorney, and this is coming from a resident, I've been here for 20 years. I've served on the board for 10 years, longer than anybody up here. I've worked with these people for 10 years. So to hear something like that publicly and not respond, I would be doing a disservice to myself and to this town. Some of those comments were completely accurate and insulting, actually. And if the residents truly care about Superior, they need to come back here and apologize publicly. I resent the fact that some of those comments were made today. I just want to be clear where I stand. I'm not running for office again. I'm not politically correct. I don't have anything to gain. It doesn't really matter to me. I speak the truth. And what we heard here today was inaccurate. I trust Matt and I trust Kendra. And I certainly trust my board members and I certainly trust our mayor. And we're here serving you. Do you know how much money we get paid for this? Turns out to be about $3 a day. Okay, just so we're clear. We volunteered for years and years and years to serve this community. This was a mistake what happened here today. Everybody has a right to express their concerns. I get it. The frustrations, I get it. Some of my best friends live on Wiggins. Dear, dear friends. I can pretty much name everybody that's facing the town center. I hear it from them. I love them. They're my friends. They're my neighbors. But let's not start insinuating that something immoral or unethical is happening here, because that is incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 12, discussion of El Dorado K park amenities.
Thank you, Mayor. Peter Bottomley, the chair of the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee, is here tonight, and he's going to present the recommendations from the committee. Peter.
Hello, Peter Bottomley, ProStac Chair. So between the last board meeting and this evening, ProStac tried to quickly discuss through email the amenities that could potentially go back into the school parcel park, given the extra money left in the budget. The process through email wasn't ideal. There were some members of ProStac that were unhappy with not having a face-to-face meeting to discuss in detail the amenities that could go forward. But at the end of the day, we had a list of amenities that was agreed upon by the majority. We really were able to get pretty much anything that the ProStac members thought should go back into the design on the list that was put in the packet. And I'll just run down that real quick. This is more or less in order of priority, I guess you could say. You could always, some of these are relatively low budget items, so you could always debate whether or not, 4 is more important than 5 on the list, but I'll just go down from the top. Fitness cluster, so that would be a group of outdoor fitness equipment. Scrambling boulders, which would be natural rock boulders for smaller age kids to be able to climb on, in comparison to the net climber, which is in the design, which would be for a little bit older age group of kids. A swing set pit, at least one additional piece of play equipment, such as a zip line, monkey bars, or there's different types of spinner equipment out there that we had sent some pictures amongst ourselves, such as spinning wheels, mega swing, board rider, air glider. These are not pieces of equipment that are in any Superior parks currently. Bocce ball and horseshoe pits, a group of game tables. These would be chess, checker tables. An embankment slide, which would be a slide built into the grade on probably the north side of the park, which is what was in the original design. So this is, think of a regular slide, but rather than having to climb up a ladder, go down it, you would just climb up the hillside and go down it. And then slack line. So those were the items. They were decided on to not be changing the existing grade or civil infrastructure. Because of that, we had rolled out some of the bigger items, community garden, natural amphitheater, tennis courts that were in the original three-phase design. It would be impractical to add those back in at this point. Any questions? Trustee Petty?
Would you comment on lighting?
So the lighting is something that came up in the last board meeting. Staff had been given direction to add that into the design, but when we heard of the cost that was potentially associated with that, as well as the fact that there's a reason why we hadn't discussed lighting before, it was a topic that was discussed through email, and there was pretty much unanimous support that ProStack could not get behind recommending that lighting be included in the park. This would be the low-level ballard lighting along the sidewalk. Aside from the potential cost, it was that through the public process from the very beginning, it was pretty clear to ProStack that this park would not be accommodating nighttime use. There would be no lighting to be able to use the fields or courts or anything like that. There would only be a security light on the restroom. The lighting on the sidewalk, that would probably not allow use of the basketball court or the field so much, but it would definitely be putting people in the park at night, walking dogs, that sort of activity. And, essentially because we were saying that this park would close at dusk, essentially, we weren't talking about lighting at any point going forward from the beginning. So to add it in back now without any real public process behind it, ProStack couldn't see supporting that.
Okay. Anyone else?
We're not voting on this, right?
Well,
You're looking for you're looking for direction
so
from
we
the
can
board.
provide that to the contractor.
Okay.
yes.
so, and I recall this process that we had. We bantered back and forth whether we were going to add more amenities to come closer to what the actual budget was. And some members of the board said, no, let's just vote in front of us, and we'll have it come back from ProStack with a public process of some sort, where they can bring in the amenities that they had a list of that went through many, many, many public meetings, and we already had that data. So we did not approve anything to be done other than what we approved with the plan that had come forward last meeting. So here we are, exactly where we should be with all these different amenities and figuring out what we can put in. And as I see it, if you exclude the lighting and you just look at items 1 through 8, you're looking at roughly $250,000 to put all these different amenities that will not change the design or regrade or cause any hardship to the RFP that's already been put out, and it still puts us under budget. So considerably, actually. So I think we've asked for the process. We have it in front of us, and I'm going to vote for this because this gives this park more amenities, which is what we wanted in the first place, and we stripped it all off. And here we are, able to add them back in. So I think it's a win-win.
I'll just say regarding the lighting, I'd say at a minimum we should definitely consider $18,500 for conduit to put into the ground. The bollards can be decided at a later date. If people decide they want light, we can put light in. But to not put that in and then to later want it in, it's probably going to cost double that and all the disruption of the park after it's already built and people are enjoying it. So I think that'd be foolish not to put the conduit in for the lighting at the point of construction. It's the smallest cost item on this list.
But I have to disagree in that we don't have that kind of lighting anywhere else other than Purple Park. So we haven't put that in all of our different parks. So I don't see why we would put it in this one. And I don't really feel like spending $18,000 to find out later nobody wants it anyway. So
I mean, I have to agree with Mayor Pro Tem Williams and with ProStack. I don't think we should do that right now because it hasn't gone through the public process. We've already gotten to this point. So I understand what you're saying. If we choose to do it later on, we have to,
still the same cost.
No, it's going to cost more than
it's
that.
not the
It's
same
going to be
cost
disruptive.
later.
But you're spending $18,000 for something that ProStack disagrees with. I think maybe the majority of the board maybe disagrees with. It's for some future board to maybe vote for it later on and put lights on when this is supposed to be a dusk to dawn park. It changes the whole feel of the park. So at this late stage, I'm with you, Deborah. So.
Okay, Trustee Pennington.
I'm actually going to let somebody else litigate conduit, but I am not in favor of lights at the current point in time because you're right, it absolutely was totally the public process on this was record long, and it never came up other than we didn't want light pollution. We didn't want main lights. I walked through Purple Park. I felt those bollards. For Purple Park's design, I think they work nicely because that meanders through. But this would actually go around a loop. So the light pollution prospect of it is greater. So no lights now. Whether or not we do conduit, I'll leave to the majority. But what I'd like to do on the, just to fine tune this a little bit, can you describe how many exercises can be done in said fitness cluster?
So because we didn't meet face-to-face and because we were really just putting together a list of amenities, we did not go into detail about, how many or what type of specific type of outdoor fitness equipment. We weren't saying it would be an elliptical and, pull-up bars. We didn't have that discussion at all. So I wouldn't really be comfortable commenting on that right now. Design concepts, when staff goes back to them, I'm sure that they would be able to put together a fair representation.
What I'd like to see the board do is give you a little bit of, give the decision makers, I don't care if it's ProStack or staff or whoever, because if we don't do the lights at all, is it a $69,000 project, or is it 69 plus 18.5?
No, it's,
The lighting
it's 69
with the conduit
with the lights, and then it's just 18.
on top of that for the
No.
Okay, so it's a total 69. My point is, if a fitness cluster is in fact a smallish type of amenity, we might have 2 fitness clusters, right? Because one might not be enough. I don't have a idea of what this fitness cluster would be, and we would have flexibility in that budget to add a second fitness cluster if you guys decided on it, or staff, or whoever decided on it. So I just want to make sure that any dedication to fitness is something substantial enough to be in the park at all. If it's piddly, don't even put it in there. So that's where I'm coming from. Going down to number 5, where it says bocce ball and horseshoe pits, because Original Town already, Founders Park already has horseshoe pits, I think just putting bocce ball in here is enough, because it makes it distinctive. Want to go play horseshoes, I'll go down to Founders. If I want to play bocce, I'll come up here. And then on the game tables, it's important, where I've seen these successfully, there is at minimum 3 game tables clustered or more. It's not just one, which will look naked out there, or even 2 look sort of naked, but it's a cluster of 3, 4, 5, 8, depending on. And what comes to mind is that one visual ProStack presented to us, where there was this opening treed court coming into the park with tables in it. Do you recall what I'm talking about, Peter?
You're talking about Town Center Parcel 3?
Oh, that's where it was, yeah. So I'm for game tables if we have at least 3. I'm not for game tables if we have 1 or we have 2. I don't think that makes it
We had discussed
is
it
enough.
as, amongst us as a group of 2 to 4. Again, didn't get into the specifics of whether it would be 2 or 4 or the exact placement. The one thing I will add to the game tables that ProStack members seemed in favor of was putting some type of shade structure over those game tables, so that they're not just sitting out there in the heat of the sun and not being used.
What I'm hoping to do
Hold on.
is...
I think there's a lot of details that we can, these
Well,
are
but
these
this
are
is our
surface.
last opportunity, I think.
I know, but these, we can move the improvements forward, but then we can work out the details of where,
But what's the
where.
mechanism for working them out?
Well, I think that's staff, and staff can work with ProStack. I mean, we.
Right, that's what I mean. That's why I'm giving direction now to
Okay.
ProStack as to...
I'd like to offer opportunity for public comment, and then I think
Okay.
we should move this on to a vote and move it forward.
Fine.
So
Would it
any,
be the final vote?
It'll never be the final vote. Anyone want to make public comment on this? Go ahead. I thought you might, so I wanted to give you that
Brought your
opportunity.
notes, I'm sure,
Right.
for this one.
Actually, well, I wish. Kevin Ryan, West Torrey's Peak. Thank you. Good evening. Nice to see everybody here to talk about our park, which is wonderful. Quick comment before I make. So I have been involved in government on this side of the podium and sometimes on the other side of the podium. And I was thinking the towns. I grew up in Manhasset, Long Island, moved to Washington, D.C., lived in San Francisco, a couple towns in the East Bay. I know a lot of you, and you're getting to know me a bit. This is as good a town as any. This is very well run. So I've looked at a lot of the documentation, some of the emails that have come in. I've never seen a snotty email or a snotty comment from one of the board members. I've seen a lot of snotty comments to you. And so kudos to you for digesting those and ignoring them. I think there are some legitimate concerns around the town center, and I think this forum is good and appropriate. But I just wanted to make that comment. I sort of cringed at some of those Flint, Michigan comments before as well, so I wanted to comment on that. So with regard to K through 8, so thank you for the flexibility there. With regard to the El Dorado K through 8. First, fantastic. This is great. This is likely the last time we'll talk about it, or at least I sort of hope it is the last time we'll talk about it. And I think we have accomplished so much, and it's great that we're here talking about additional amenities. There probably aren't a lot of other governmental entities that are talking about how do we bring more amenities into a park. Having said that, I do agree with ProStack. I do not think the lighting is appropriate because it was not part of the public process. I do think at one point we actually did talk about it at one of the community forums, and it was decided that it was not wanted. So it wasn't like it just wasn't talked about. I think it actually came up, and then through that process, folks said, no, we actually don't want that light. We don't want to create the light pollution, the ambient, and to the excellent point earlier, it is a dawn to dusk park. I'm sure there will be the occasional dog walker out there. If there's the occasional dog walker, I think they could bring a flashlight. I don't think it's worth tens of thousands of dollars to provide a little bit of lighting for that occasional dog walker. So that would be my suggestion. With regard to the amenities, I think they're great. I just want to make sure we're giving clear direction to town. This is to staff and to ProStack. This is a fantastic opportunity, and the playground structures that exist in some of the parks today are really nice and good, but they're not. Nobody's coming from another town. We're not winning any design awards for any of these. This is a fantastic opportunity to do something really special. And there are some other parks. There's a park in Aspen, Colorado called Wagner Park that I would encourage ProStack and town staff to look at. That has won some design awards. It was designed, I think, in 2002 or 2003. We spent some time there. It is still very current today. So it's got the rock boulders. It's got a rope swing between two rock boulders. It's got a slide. It's got a spinny thing. It's near a bathroom, which is also used as a community kind of bulletin board, and they display local art and make community announcements through there. So it's really a fantastic park in a fraction of the landscape that we have here. So taking the opportunity, giving staff direction to say, yes, go build these amenities within the budget of $400,000 or $500,000 for what we have, given this list of priorities, and I do think they are the appropriate list of priorities, the fitness cluster, the scrambling boulders, but trying to do something a little bit beyond what we've done for some of the other parks, which again are fantastic and great, and I use them and the kids use them and they're well used by the community, but I don't think any of them have ever been nominated for a design award. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity to bring some additional attention to our fabulous town. So great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any final thoughts? And then we should go on. Okay,
The only, well, two things. One is the zip line and slack line, are they different things? Okay. And I know what a zip line is, but I don't know what a slack line is.
You're balancing on a slack line. You're hanging from a zip line.
Zip line, I know. Slack line, you're walking across? Okay.
It's like a tightrope.
Okay, got it. And then $47,000 for a fitness cluster. I'm not sure I'd want to double that, but, should understand what we're getting for $47,000 if we go ahead with that. And then the last one was additional play from 3 to 12. We should give some direction as to, I don't know if we need direction to give, but think through carefully, what of those, because that's a pretty broad range there. And then
What did you just say, additional play from 3 to 12?
Yeah, that's what
Number 4.
You went up to 8.
Number 4 was $3,000 to $12,000, so that's kind of a big range. You can.
Oh, I thought you meant ages.
No, $3,000 to $12,000.
Right.
It's like multiple things evidently, but I don't know what, that's kind of a number that is out there. And then the last thing is that picnic tables by the volleyball court, would that be considered the game tables, or would they be separate? They're already included in there?
That'd be separate.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's already included in there. Okay, thank you.
If I can
Okay.
give one great compliment, I'm very excited about the embankment slide. I think that's exactly what Kevin's talking about, where you use the natural terrain and the natural features to do some cool stuff. I also think it's cool that we're scrambling boulders are actually boulders and not plastic. So just wanted to give a heads up on that.
Okay, I think we're ready to move this forward, but on the lighting, you'd originally brought the lighting up. It seems like that idea has fizzled Or burned out.
No,
as
burned
it were.
out, yeah,
Yeah.
sparked out. No, I just want to be clear, I brought it up as an idea because I do think it adds to the ambiance of the park. I really do. Purple Park is absolutely beautiful. It's not like with the lighting that goes through that. But I won't vote no for this just because someone didn't want lights. I'm not going to sit here. It's not a personal agenda. I just thought it's a beautiful, and I love walking through Purple Park with that lighted pathway. I think it's very useful, and I also think it looks really nice as you're walking through it. But I'm not going to lie myself down on a pebbled stone, hot coals, or stab myself with just to get that. It doesn't matter. If people don't want it, that's fine. That's what we're here to discuss.
So just to be clear, we're voting on all these amenities, no lights, no conduit.
That's what Rita's trying to help us decide, if we say no lights and no conduit.
I think that's what we're voting on.
Are you
and then we
making
can-
a motion?
I am making a motion to
Thank you.
approve with the stated amenities, no lights, no conduit.
With some creative license by ProStack and
Yes.
staff and whatnot to fine tune.
Yes.
Pick
Okay.
the things that seem to fit within the design without having to recreate the design.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Gregoris, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams, and we need a roll call vote since this involves money.
Gregoris?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Dozell?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next is item number 13, adoption of a resolution approving an easement and maintenance agreement with CenterPoint Development Company, LLC, and Superior Plaza, LLC for Lot 2, Block 1, Superior Town Center. Town Manager?
Town's entered into a sale and purchase agreement with CenterPoint Development to build a commercial building on Lot 1, Block 1 of the Superior Town Center. Lot 1 is designated for commercial use within the Superior Town Center. Is considered a prime retail location due to its proximity to Cavity Boulevard and US 36. As part of our agreement with CenterPoint, the town will retain ownership of Lot 2 and use it for additional parking to benefit businesses that will be built on Lot 1 as well as existing businesses in the area. The sale and purchase agreement requires that during the evaluation period, an easement and maintenance agreement for Lot 2 be approved by the town. CenterPoint and Superior Plaza are parties to the agreement. Superior Plaza is the entity that owns Superior Liquor Store that is adjacent to the park that will be the parking lot. The agreement provides for the improvement of Lot 2, the parking lot by CenterPoint with reimbursement by the town, the not to exceed amount of $300,000. CenterPoint and Superior Liquor will share in the ongoing maintenance costs for Lot 2. Conditions of the agreement include the town will grant a permanent easement on Lot 2 for parking. Superior Plaza will agree that parking will only be used for employees and customers of the Superior Liquor Store. CenterPoint agrees to construct improvements on Lot 2 as approved in a final development plan to come forward for board approval. Reimbursement by the town for the improvements to Lot 2. The town will retain ownership of Lot 2. CenterPoint will be responsible for maintenance of Lot 2 and the access drive, with cost shared by Superior Plaza, and that either party can assign the agreement with the consent of the town. There's a couple provisions within the agreement that came up after it was in the packet, and Matt Ladendorf, who represents CenterPoint's not here tonight, so I'll mention the one for him. In section 2 of the agreement, representatives for CenterPoint wanted to add language that limited potential users for the liquor store if it were to close. They wanted to limit the potential restaurant user that could occupy that space to be more than 3,000 square feet in size. They believe anything larger than this may impact the parking and have an impact on their existing businesses. It's our opinion that the language that's in section 2, which requires the town to consent to any approved new user that would occupy the liquor store space if it changed uses, and we use the town's parking lot. So we have control, I think. It's our opinion,
Yep.
at least.
I don't think that's necessary.
So we wouldn't recommend making that change. as long as the agreement remains in full force, Lot 2 will only be used as a parking lot. No development will occur on Lot 2. This will be a loss of potential new revenue to the town, because with there being no commercial building on Lot 2. However, it's going to benefit the businesses that will be on Lot 1 and the liquor store as well. So I think that's how we've got to this point. Yeah, and then Kendra has one additional change.
Yeah, Centerpoint had asked for a very minor change to the assignment section, which is section 15G. We have neither this agreement or the rights or obligations of Centerpoint or Superior Plaza shall be assigned without the written consent of the town. They want to add, which shall not be unreasonably withheld or conditioned.
I was
which is-
waiting for that language.
Which is fine. So they came to me after this was already in the packet. I have no objection to that language.
And then Superior Liquor had a couple of additional changes that they would like to see, and Pete Messmer is here for Superior Plaza, but do you have that email? One of them was to change or have the Exhibit C, which shows the parking easement and access drive where the improvements will occur, to show underneath the improvements that are planned for there, which include 2 new pedestrian access points from Superior Plaza Drive to the parking lot with cart corrals, elimination of some landscaping, trees mainly, so it's better visibility for the liquor store customers, and moving the trash enclosure further south in the parking lot, so it's further away from the liquor store. And Pete, do you want to come up? Was there something else you had in there? Yeah.
Sure, come on up and.
I don't remember the other.
Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate all the hard work everybody's putting into this this agreement. There are a couple of concerns that we have about the agreement as it currently stands, and I wanted to see if I can go through them real quickly. There's like 5 bullets, and can take questions. But we actually received the final draft from the town of Superior Thursday at noon, and I was pre-Super Bowl business in the store. I think, Matt, I did respond to an email shortly after that. Our attorney was in meetings in Denver. We didn't get back and really get a chance to review it until later in the day and early the next morning. So our responses came after the packet was completed. So there are a couple of things, though, that are of concern to us. One is in Section 13, and that is have to do with the insurance. We are comfortable with doing our share of the casualty insurance that was requested or is noted in that agreement. However, the liability insurance part that was included was stricken during the red line process. And the question really is who has liability insurance, or excuse me, no-fault casualty insurance coverage for the property in the event of a tornado coming through, tearing apart the property. We don't own it, therefore it would be difficult for us to get that type of coverage on it. So I'm not sure why it was stricken.
And let's go through these as you bring them up, okay?
Okay.
So any property the town owns is covered under our insurance policy. I mean, it's required by law that any property we own is covered under our insurance policy.
Okay. So that's covered. We're good. All right. Section 6, having to do with the maintenance section, speaks that Centerpoint, Superior Plaza are responsible for the maintenance of the public access road as well as the easement. Now that public access road is also the road to Breaks Plus, I believe, that they use. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate to include that as part of the maintenance agreement for our responsibility involving public use to other businesses, as well as the insurance coverage that we've been requested to have on that road, that public access road. So that was something of concern to us.
So the thought behind that is you're going to be there's going to be maintenance of the parking lot, and they want to ensure that the access road is maintained to whatever level the parties want in it. So that's why it was included.
Okay, that's a question that we have as far as appropriate. responsibility with other people and other businesses involved on our part. Matt, you and I spoke on several occasions about us wanting to get the verbiage, including the 2 access points and the car corrals and all that, which I think are critical for people making use of that parking lot from our liquor store. Make sure it's convenient and so on. And you've said the whole time that the FDP process would be where that would be covered. We're simply we're asking if the verbiage could be put in there indicating that there is an awareness of that request on our part being part of that, which is something that Matt Ladendorf has already agreed to over the phone with me.
Yeah.
And we were preparing for the final agreement.
Well, it didn't appear to me, and Kendra, you can
It's
add
not
as
in the
well,
agreement.
but, it's not an appropriate place to have it in the agreement. It's going to be part of the FDP. All parties have agreed. I think it makes, from a pedestrian feel, it makes sense to have those improvements done to our parking lot to help your customers, but it's not an appropriate place to have it in the agreement.
Exhibit C describing the parking area, then could the exhibit not have a non-current version of the layout underneath it? So that diamond strike that's at the end of the Exhibit C does show improvements as were recommended by Centerpoint for access from Superior Plaza.
Yeah, we can update that exhibit so that it
And
doesn't
I'd feel
show
a lot more
any,
comfortable
so
if
that
it was
it doesn't
blank.
show any improvements.
Yeah, it'd be great if it were blank instead of perhaps.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
we can update that.
All right. Section 7, both Superior Plaza and CPD, or Centerpoint, had previously agreed that the cost of maintaining the trash receptacles that they're planning to put on that parking lot would be their responsibility, and maintenance of cart corrals that we are planning to put on that parking lot be our cost responsibility. That was included in the draft, but then stricken. And I know it's a detail that maybe that you suggested be an agreement, a separate agreement, but we're also being very specific in this agreement about us paying them back and what their administrative
Right.
fee is. Like, there's a lot of detail that's in
I
it.
think we could add a section that says that Superior Plaza will maintain the cart corrals and Centerpoint will pay for the cost of trash operations or trash maintenance.
All right, and I haven't seen the final Centerpoint location of those trash enclosures. They had moved them. According to Matt Ladendorf, they were moving them somewhere else on that lot. Just FYI.
The two last locations that you saw were the locations.
Okay, so the second one's now taking up 3 parking spaces instead of 2?
No, they're both at the front of the parking lot, away from your store.
Okay, because his drawing submitted that's Exhibit C shows the second one on the eastern border.
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
That's
Okay.
not correct.
All right.
And when we update Exhibit C to show no improvements, that'll eliminate
Right,
that
okay.
error.
All right. Section 14, the agreement completely goes away if one party terminates. It's very concerning to us as a business becoming dependent on that parking. If Centerpoint were to terminate, that would put our availability for that lot in jeopardy. So I don't know if there's potential for a clause in there that would protect us from that. Be nice. I feel strongly about that one as well.
I'm not really comfortable negotiating this agreement here.
think
We've
we're
been
ready for
negotiating
this
this for
tonight.
3 months, and
But
we've gone back and forth with them over and over again.
This is one of my concerns. Is we've been working on this since December,
Yeah.
and it never seems to get finalized.
No.
I mean, this is an agreement that we need to have in place so we can move forward with the FDP, sell the lot, get the commercial under construction, and move forward. I think the town's being very gracious and giving additional parking to both entities, and this agreement should not be this difficult in either of our minds.
No, I mean, we've got back and forth on these same issues over and over and over and over again, and then every time one party brings up something, then Centerpoint disagrees with it, so we've really tried to.
Can we finish are you at the
I am
end?
one bullet point away.
Okay, and
Okay.
then can we respond on all of them?
Sure. All right. The last point that I have, which is really far out there in terms of probability, but there are restrictions for the use on our half or our share of the lot to Superior Liquor employees and customers only. There is no such limitation on Centerpoint. not that I envision there being a change, but any other use they might have for that parking space outside of their 4 businesses is a potential concern for ours, albeit very unlikely. It's just strange that the agreement puts restrictions on our use, but not contained to that building's employee and customer
Well,
base.
and that was, that came up because the parking request was specifically to support the liquor store.
Mhm.
And so we want, and not to support the office that's on the 2nd floor. So that's the distinction there.
Understood.
And I mean, how many square feet of office do you have upstairs?
29.
29,000.
No, I understand the
Yeah.
restriction on us. I'm not debating that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm wondering why there's not a restriction on Centerpoint that prevents them from anybody
What type of
outside of their employee and/or customer base using that parking lot. Unlikely, but potentially there.
Can you give me an example?
Well, they decide to make it a carpool place for Starbucks customers. I don't know. To head down to Denver. Unlikely, but strange that it's excluded.
Well, that would, so the parking that's going to be available on Lot 2, if they were to make something designated for use, as you mentioned, that would have a distinct impact on the retailers, which they have separate lease agreements with, to provide adequate parking. So
Right.
they would be violating their own lease, in my mind, if they were to do something like that.
Okay. All right. First of all, we have been working very hard too, and certainly don't want anybody to think that we've been dragging our feet. It's a very, very important opportunity for us. We appreciate the town's offer on this thing. We'd like to make it work. We also want to make sure that everything is in place in the event that there is any type of argument, discussion, or debate, or legal interpretation that's not clearly spelled out. And we have spent endless hours and dollars with our attorney trying to work directly with Centerpoint's attorney. I think we much would have preferred dealing directly with the town the whole time going on this agreement. It would have been, I think, a little bit more effective for both of us. But thank you very much for
Okay,
your time.
thank you. Why don't we do any additional public comment on this, and then we'll go into questions. Any public comment? Okay. Discussion?
Okay, no public comment. I thought somebody changed their mind. I have 2 major comments on this. One, I'm just concerned that, when you get something Thursday afternoon and it's supposed to be in the packet by Thursday evening, it really doesn't give you much time to review things. So that's a concern. But I think the biggest concern to me in this is if this is the town's lot, then we should be working with each business on our own. We shouldn't be forcing the 2 businesses to try to work together. That causes too many issues, as we've just listened to. I don't understand why we don't have 2 separate contracts with each business with the town, and we work from that. I mean, to me, the biggest flaw here is the fact that one business can either cease to exist or move or whatever, end the contract, and then the other business has to actually draw a whole new contract with the town. That doesn't make sense to me. If they're entering in with the town, then we should just be entering in with just one business at a time. I mean, it is our lot, so we do have the wherewithal and the process in order to do whatever we want. So we don't have to do it this way. It seems very complex, and it seems like that might be half the trouble between the 2 businesses that,
I think, though, the idea is it's a shared lot, and we, the town, didn't want to get in the business of managing all these details of plowing and all of the maintenance and things like that. And so that's why you create this agreement that they take care of it.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
it's extremely convoluted at this point. You have one of them
Well,
managing it and the other one splitting the cost, but we own the lot, and then we have a contract where we're working with both, that the two of them have to work together. It's just, there's
Kendra,
too many variables.
Can you comment on one contract versus two?
Sure. The original direction from the board was one contract because, well, basically this was an incentive for Centerpoint, right? Because this was part of the purchase and sale agreement. Centerpoint wanted the parking. At some point during that discussion, the board said, well, hey, what about Superior Liquor? And we need to ensure that Superior Liquor has adequate parking. So that's how the discussion happened. So that's how.
Wait, hold on.
I don't agree.
Where did we say one contract? I mean, that is not something even in our verbiage here.
Okay, then I said that wrong. I apologize. But the direction was that this was supposed to provide parking for Centerpoint, and then in that discussion but we need to protect Superior Liquor and make sure it has adequate parking because there has been some concern in the past that there wasn't adequate parking. The problem is we're giving an easement in real property. So we're giving a property interest, and the concern is who are we giving that property interest to? And that all needs to be part of one agreement because we're giving away one property interest. If they both have separate easements for the same property and they're fighting amongst each other, we are going to end up playing referee between them. The point of this agreement was so that we wouldn't have to do that. So everybody agreed ahead of time what the different obligations of each party were, what our obligation was, which was not to be in the middle of this. And I think that's the issue. So if I misspoke and said you said one agreement, that's not what you meant.
But actually what you just said just occurred. I mean, it actually occurred.
Look, these guys are sharing a parking lot. They need to
But I mean,
work
we need to
together.
be able to agree.
They need to
Difficult.
discuss.
We've made it extremely
They need to be able
difficult.
to discuss terms like an admin fee and agree on them. And
This isn't simple. It could be very simple.
I agree with you completely.
I
100%.
guys, I disagree totally, and we can go back to the tape. 3 or 4 meetings ago, a couple of us became aware that Centerpoint had offered Superior Liquor 13 parking spots, which was totally unpalatable to Superior Liquor. At that time, I brought this up in my reports and said, forcing Superior Liquor to negotiate with Centerpoint just was ripe with all kinds of potential conflicts. And I expressly said the town is the owner of this lot, the town's the principal. We have 2 subordinates. We need to be negotiating with them separately. And I got head nods and verbal agreement from both of you that said that that was going to happen.
And that has happened.
And now I get this intermingled, codependent agreement in front of us. It's one thing if it was clean and it all worked out nicely and whatever, that's okay. But it does have some major shortcomings, and I don't blame the parties for being a little nervous about them. A big one.
This
big
is
one
our parking lot. I mean, should we give in to each party and everything they want?
Oh no, absolutely
I mean, they're
the
getting
contrary.
basically free parking.
No, that has nothing to do
I
with
mean, that's not
anything.
the
It's how
issue.
we fashion an agreement with multiple parties. And this,
Okay. I don't
chief
think-
area where this codependence comes into is this termination clause. It makes, Pete brought it up, that, you know, if one party ceases to exist for whatever reason, it throws in flux the parking of the other party. To me, that could totally have been avoided with 2 agreements by us, because at that point we can just, Superior Liquor sells or goes out of business or whatever, it's up to us to grant that parking to whoever takes its place. So I just speak up.
It allows for it to be assigned to another party with consent of the town.
I think the reason it took 3 months is because of the position we put them in of negotiating with each other. I can't imagine it taking 3 months. So I'm not going to rest on that 3-month argument. I'm resting on whether or not I think this is a well-fashioned agreement and whether or not the biggest bugaboos are out of it.
Okay, I didn't hear critical things that were that far apart on. I mean, I heard concerns, and then I heard most of them were responded to with answers that seemed satisfactory. So I think we're at the point where we've got to move this thing forward, or
For what
make.
reason? Why are we?
Well,
why
because
are we
if we
bound
want that-
today to do this, and
Because
why
if we
can't
want to
get them
sell-
clean it up and do it in 2 weeks.
If we want to sell the lot, this has got to be completed.
But let's, as Pete said, he got this Thursday at noon. We can't expect anybody who
Well,
gets something
the-
Thursday at noon to be ready.
This-
But
That was a latest version. It was not like it was.
But the point is, if we wait, if we put the pressure on staff, Centerpoint, and Superior Liquor to come back to us in 2 weeks, no further extensions with a clean contract that they can all live with, why can't we give them 2 more weeks? Why do we have to play judge and jury on this?
Okay, let's hear from
Well,
the other side.
from what I heard, there isn't an agreement, so I don't know what, we can't force this on anybody if there's not an agreement, so I don't know what we're doing tonight. I think we should, the most I would say is, maybe we should authorize the town to go forward with the parties. When they reach the point of that they have an agreement, go ahead and sign it. Because I don't know why has to come back to us if we say, but they don't have an agreement now, so there's nothing we can say to go forward on. I just heard enough there that there isn't an agreement. So there's not a meeting in the minds.
I agree. When we put it in the packet, we were under the impression that there was. So it wouldn't have gone in the packet had we not understood it to be an agreement that all 3 parties had agreed to.
Can this, okay,
Go ahead.
but follow up to, can this be signed by the parties before it comes to us? Subject to our
Sure.
signature?
Yes. I mean, they can
Okay.
certainly.
I mean, that's not a
That would
bad-
be wonderful.
That's
Yeah.
not a bad suggestion.
And normally I would require that. Again, in this case, we were put in a position of not having a lot of time.
So
at
if it's
the
a head
last
nod,
minute.
that we can say, if they reach an agreement, go ahead and sign it, or if
Now,
not,
what is the time issue? Is there a time constraint
I
on
mean, the
this?
FDP is going to the planning commission in March, and then it goes to the board in April. So this agreement needs to be done before the FDP moves forward. And then they want, the schedule is to start construction soon after the FDP is approved. They're doing construction documents concurrent with the FDP plans that they're putting together, because they have lease agreements that they need to meet with retailers that they have signed. So that's, and so that's kind of where we're at.
So it seems like we have a plan there, but there are some things the town does need to be aware of. For example, the conveyance of a permanent easement. And I need clarification from Kendra on what is a permanent easement, and it appears that there's assignability of that permanent easement in here.
It is assignable with our approval, yes.
Okay. And
A permanent easement means we can't revoke it.
so assignability, in layman's terms,
Yes.
is if Superior Liquor sells out to Timbuktu Corp., they can assign their share of the parking agreement to Timbuktu, right?
With our approval, yes.
Right, okay.
And the intent of that was to address the concern of what if he puts an entirely different type of tenant in there?
Right.
You know, and so the town has the ability to approve the assignment based on the parking that would be generated by the new assignee, the tenant.
Okay. And then the other thing is this, Pete mentioned it a little bit. I'm shocked to know that that is not a road.
It's always been an access easement.
Okay. So, we own that? Okay. And in this agreement, the maintenance of that in perpetuity is between Centerpoint and Superior Liquor or their assignees, right? So
There'll be
how?
improvements made to it by CenterPoint.
Yeah.
And then, and maintenance is, for the
So-
most part, going to be snow removal.
How does that, well, and how about re-asphalting? It's always full of potholes, that goes.
Well, when CenterPoint does their construction, there'll be, I don't know if it'll be a reconstruction of that road, but an overlay of it.
Yeah, but it's always in somewhat questionable shape. But I thought the point was well made tonight about a lot of that traffic goes to Old Chicago and to Breaks Plus. So those entities are off the hook.
They're not getting any parking either.
That's true.
Okay, Trustee Dozell, and then we
Okay.
probably should just table this till.
Well, I think we've decided what we're going to do, but I have a couple questions. One was that very point about that access drive to the parking lot now, which is being used today like a road, accessing all the businesses along there. So theoretically, both parties of this agreement could put up a sign that says access by Superior Liquor customers and CPD customers only.
No, we're providing an
No, we
easement for
haven't.
the use of that, so they couldn't put up any signage without the town's approval.
Okay, so people will still be able to go through that parking area like a street kind of and go to whatever businesses they want to? Okay. And then Exhibit C, I was going to suggest just what you did, is to take out the underlying design so that you don't have any problem with that. And then you mentioned site plan in the agreement. Is that the same as the FDP? Okay, we're saying the same thing. And then indemnification, Kendra, when it says that are trustees included as part of the town or the officers?
Yes.
Okay, not, because we're not named specifically. And I definitely agree, no addition of the terms that CPD talked about, that they were going to limit what types of businesses or how big of businesses might go into Superior Liquor if they ever sold or things like that. That's ridiculous. A reciprocal statement could be made, could it not? I guess that would be between the parties, though, that CPD Centerpoint businesses, employees and customers are the only ones allowed to park in that parking lot, just like Superior Liquor.
Yeah, I think it would say employees and customers of the retail businesses.
Right, whatever they are, but basically of those. So
Of lot
if
one.
it says that for Superior Liquor, and the reason it says it's for Superior Liquor was just that idea that you talked about, because it's not Superior Plaza building employees, it's Superior Liquor employees and customers only. And then a reciprocal or a complimentary statement could be put in there about the businesses in the center point. And then I think send it back, tell them to come back with a clean copy, and then we'll sign and we'll approve it. I like that idea.
It's, the agreement's to come back to the board?
Well, what do
After
we
it's
have to
been
do?
signed.
Don't we have to vote on something or not?
Well,
No?
at this point, my suggestion is that we have to bring it back to you because we don't have, I mean, there are going to be substantive changes made. I would love to say, your classic resolution that you would approve would say substantially in the form attached to Tier 2, subject to final approval by the town attorney. My guess is that the substance will change.
Yeah.
And so I'd be more comfortable bringing it back to you. I don't know how I would approve that substance without hearing from all of you again. I wouldn't want to be in that position.
And my recommendation would be, not to
No, that's fine.
go
I
against
understand.
that, would be to make the three changes I heard. Change the Exhibit C so it shows no improvements. Add language that states Superior
Employees
Liquor
and customers.
will maintain the cart corrals, and Centerpoint will maintain the trash enclosures and trash maintenance costs. And then the third section would be reciprocal language stating that
Customers and employees.
customers and employees for Lot 2 for Centerpoint are restricted to those of businesses of Lot 1.
And I suggest that when you bring this forward, you have both businesses sign that, and that is what's in our
What
packet.
I'm recommending is you approve the agreement with those three changes, and we tell them sign it.
I can't
or
do
we don't
that.
have an
No.
agreement.
Because we're sending it back to the parties. We don't even have one of the parties here tonight.
Right, we haven't even
And
heard.
there may be different interpretations, so I don't want to limit it. I'd much rather you have the flexibility to accommodate reasonable changes, sign it, seal it, bring it back
My
to
concern
us.
is that it's going to continue to be delayed.
2 weeks.
That's what I said in January,
Um,
and we're here in February.
Kendra, can you, this thing on the second or third whereas, permanent easement, what is a permanent easement? And do we have any mechanism in here if this deal goes to pot? And we eventually, let's say, one, it goes to pot and we want to terminate the deal. Two, if we want to sell the lot and discontinue it as a parking lot, do we have those caveats in here? So I need three
No.
things. What's a permanent easement?
A permanent easement is, it's like selling the property. We own the underlying fee interest in it, but the permanent easement is in place. The only way for us to get rid of that easement is if they somehow violated it, and we would have to go and get the easement removed from the property. So it is a permanent interest in property, and there's no provision. If we sell it, we have to sell it subject to the easement, or the parties have to agree to release that easement.
And we are getting no revenue for this. We're just getting perpetual maintenance, that
Yes.
kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. So and why is there nothing in here terminating that perpetual easement for cause or to actually sell the lot?
Because that turns it into, in some ways, a different interest in property. So there's very specific requirements for how to terminate an easement.
But should we be calling it something other than a permanent easement so that we do retain that ability?
We can give them a revocable license. My suspicion is no one's going to spend the time and the money to do this, and I think that was part of the deal in the purchase and sale agreement, that they get a permanent easement. That's what they asked for. A revocable license means we can revoke it. It's just a license. It's a license to use it. But my suspicion is that they would not agree to that. That was not in the terms of the deal points going back to the purchase and sale agreement for Lot 1. They wanted a permanent easement to, basically they wanted to know that their investment in that parking lot.
They're not going to go for that. I mean, nobody buy land without parking. I mean, that's what they would essentially be doing, and they're not going to do that.
They wanted to
This
buy the
whole,
lot.
Right.
this whole
They do
deal.
want to buy the lot, yeah.
Right, which
Well-
in some ways may have been easier, honestly.
Well,
but
My
if we-
point, exactly, when we did, but, so let me ask about a term. Could you have a term on the easement, like a
yes.
50-year term or 20-year or 99-year term or something?
We could have a term on the easement, but again, that wasn't part of the purchase and sale. The deal point that was offered was a permanent,
To
perpetual
whom-
permanent
to whom?
easement.
Centerpoint?
Right, because that's who we're granting the easement to. We're not granting it to anybody else. We're only granting the easement to one party.
It says to CPD and Superior Plaza.
It's to both. We conveyed to both of them.
Oh, we're conveying it to
Yes.
both?
Mhm.
Without separating, okay. They both have complications.
That's why it's one, it goes back to why it's one agreement.
They're
right?
married.
Oh, more complicated than ever.
Yeah.
Sell it to them.
Okay. I think we're split at best on this one. And so I think it's just got to come back.
We can't vote on it. Just as Sorelli said, we can't. There's not an agreement there.
Well, we could, the way the map.
We
presented
could,
it.
the way the
map
manager
presented it,
said.
with these three stipulations, we could vote on it, based on them agreeing on these three stipulations. If they don't agree, obviously, they don't have an agreement.
I
So-
think
Well,
it's
let's all try to be adults. Tell them 2 weeks, come back with a signed agreement.
signed
Mhm.
without
Sorry.
limitations of 3. I mean, do what it takes.
Okay. We good? Done with that one?
Yes.
As much as we can be done with it?
Just as a reminder, when this comes back in 2 weeks, let's not spend an hour on this. If there's an agreement that everybody's agreed on, if it's signed, yes, let's
If
just
it's
vote on it.
signed.
Yes, if it's signed, obviously, yes.
I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break.
Yeah, we need to before we
Okay.
get to the big.
We've got a big whopper
Well,
coming
let me just, before we open the public hearing, let's just kind of talk about the process here, because it's 9:20. It's 9:20, we do need a break. And I would suggest that we adjourn at 10:30 at the latest, which is safe to say that we're not going to finish tonight. And therefore, we're going to need to think about a continue to date, and we can either do that now or we can do that at 10:25. And I would almost suggest that we do it now, because it's inevitable. It's something that's got to be done. Our choices are continue to the next regularly scheduled meeting date, which is the second meeting in February. Trustee Dozell is not going to be here, and we would like to have as full of a board as possible for this discussion and decision. So that means that we would be continuing this to the first meeting in March, which is March 14th, and over a month away. So I'm going to suggest that we look at dates either this week or next week for a special meeting to continue this to. So that's why I asked all of you to have your calendars at the ready. So why don't let's figure that out, and then we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back, open the public hearing. And when we open the public hearing, I'd like to start with staff presentation, then go to developer presentation, and then go to public comment, but not have board questions of staff, not have board questions of developer, and not have dialogue and public comment. We would just have those three in succession, and then we'll see how far we get with that even tonight, because that's going to be basically an hour to. We may not even get to public comment, or we probably won't get through all of public comment, but we'll do the best we can.
Quick point about public comment. Will public people be guaranteed their 5 minutes, or are you going to try to
I'm sorry, but it's very important
Okay.
not to take
Okay.
questions on this issue from the
Okay.
audience until the public hearing is opened and at the correct time. I
Okay.
apologize.
We are going to follow the procedure on public comment, so just rest assured we will do that.
Look at dates then.
Okay, let's look at dates for a continuation of this meeting.
Did you say we may or may not have public comment tonight?
Well, depending on
Run out
the
of
length of staff presentation and developer presentation, we may eat up an hour with that.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
that.
My problem with that is public has come. They've sat through.
Well, and we've
2.5
also taken
hours,
we've
and
also
they-
taken an extra hour on all this other
But
stuff.
that's okay,
you know.
but they may not be available when we
Well,
set up the next meeting.
right.
So I just want to be accommodating of the public who has put in the
Exactly.
effort to be here. If we can get them to the mic,
If we
that would be
can,
nice.
we will. Okay.
But it makes sense to have the public comment after the presentations have been given, right? Or else, maybe not, I don't know.
I mean, the information's
Pertinent?
Publicly available.
so
It's been
Yeah.
publicly
you could
available.
take public
reviewed.
comment.
We could
I
open.
mean,
We
I'm
could
okay to have
open
public
with
comment
comment.
first, if that helps.
I mean, we
I
could
think
open
so.
with public
If
comment.
that's fine.
Are we determining a meeting time?
Yes.
First?
And I suggest that we consider off Mondays at this point.
Right.
Starting with next Monday.
Feb. 15?
Next Monday's a
I-
holiday.
I'm out.
I cannot make
I cannot
next
make that.
February 15th.
My wedding anniversary, my wife will kill me, so.
Okay.
Well, you never have to worry about another
Next
anniversary.
Monday's. So,
That's one way
is
to
anyone in for this week? Say this Thursday. No.
There's an RCAC meeting on Thursday night.
Okay. So next.
But that goes till 6:30.
What's wrong with the 22nd?
I'm not here, and
Oh,
I'd
you're-
like to
I'm
be
sorry,
here
yeah,
for
yeah,
the
you're
part,
right, you're
yeah,
right.
I would like to be here.
How about February 29th? It's a Monday.
I can do that.
I
Well,
can too.
okay,
Well,
but we don't
can
want to
we-
work for next week sometime? Like Tuesday, the 16th or 17th?
I'm out of town.
No,
All
next
week? You're out of
week-
town all week?
Next week I can't do it in the evening.
Okay, that's
Okay, so
fine.
we could do it the 11th after the RCAC meeting if there are other people here, but we don't know about.
I'm not here.
You're not here?
No,
Okay.
gone.
29th is okay with me.
Well, what about the 23rd, 24th, 25th?
Okay,
I'll
the
consider
20.
Mondays. I think we should consider Mondays.
The 29th, we're all in?
29th?
Yep.
29th?
29th?
Well, that's a good day. There won't be another one of those for
29th?
4 years, so. we can
February
do that.
29th?
Special meeting on a special day.
Okay.
There it is.
February 29th is our continuation. Okay, let's take 5
Are we
minutes.
going to look at other dates to
Is
make
it
sure that we?
normal time?
No, we're going to.
Oh, are we talking
No, I
normal
mean
time?
further dates.
Well, let's just get through today.
Okay.
To further continue a continued meeting?
That's right, because.
No, we're
Then
not.
that meeting, we're not going to have any other agenda.
No other
It's,
agenda.
Okay.
it's going to be, and is that 7 o'clock? Or 6 o'clock, 7
Happy
o'clock?
with
What are we?
6.
Matt, Kendra?
6
Sorry.
PM?
Could we start at 6 p.m.?
Is that okay with the developer?
Well,
Okay. 6 p.m. on the 29th?
yes, that was fine.
6 PM?
And that will be the only item on that agenda. Okay. Okay, we're taking 5 minutes. We'll be back at 9:30.
I probably just got myself in trouble, but
Oh, yes, it's entirely up to you.
Again, based on our earlier conversation, I do think we'll start with public comment and offer people that would like to make public comment an opportunity to do so, since we may or may not get through developer and staff presentation on this item. So let's open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Do we have proof of publication? Okay, proof of publication is verified. All right, let's go ahead with public comment. Come on forward. Just a reminder to everyone to state your name, address in 5 minutes or less, please.
Hi, my name is Teresa Clark. I live at 765 East Wiggin Street here in Superior. And I am here to talk about, again, the most contentious issue that we have faced. It seems to be stirring up a lot of strong feelings in everyone. And just to make a quick response to Trustee Gregoris's comment, the residents along this border started communicating with the town staff about this in June. That was 8 months ago, 9 months ago. And in September, 31 of us gave you letters asking for some response to this, and that was 5, 6 months ago, and nothing's happened. So while I understand your anger, I also understand the frustration of the residents. And on a very personal note, I happen to have been one of the residents who had to vacate their home for 6 weeks post-surgery because of what was going on with the buffer, and all the while trying to send emails to the staff that you trust so much and got no response from them whatsoever on the issue. I hope that someday I can share the trust in them that you have. But right now it's a vote of no confidence. So I apologize for that bit of emotion here on this topic.
No, you're always very respectful, and I appreciate your comments, and I always have, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So, regarding PD Amendment 3 and the impacts that it could have on the residential buffer, we have requested multiple times that the 250-foot buffer starting at the barbed wire fence be honored. It's clearly written in the annexation agreement of 1998. After having followed this issue on several times, I've heard Ranch Capital state that, oh, it's private property, but then in this very meeting, Matt Magley just said it's the town's property, so there's a lot of conflict there. I've also heard Ranch Capital say that residents have no right to have any input in the agreement. Well, residents not only have a right, they have a responsibility to see that their town upholds the agreement. That includes their elected officials, their appointed officials, and their employed officials. So to put all that aside, we'd like our 250 feet. It's not hard. There's a road in the buffer that the annexation agreement clearly says is supposed to be on the east side of Carlson Pond, and it could be moved there. It'll require some engineering. I studied mechanical engineering at Rice University. I know what I'm talking about. It can be done. So let's just do it. Let's make PD Amendment 3, if you choose to approve it, which, by the way, I'm conflicted that you should, but if you choose to approve it, please make contingent on it that the buffer's restored to its size, its natural size, by April of this year, and then landscape by June. Because I don't think residents are going to want to go through another summer of not being able to enjoy their backyards and their homes if you're going to wait that long to make something happen to move the dirt back and landscape it. Now, regarding the technical implications of PD Amendment 3, it proposes a lot of housing that's very popular in Washington, D.C., and very popular in certain parts of California, the Bay Area down south. Some of them are as narrow as 10 feet wide. Give yourself 6 inches on each side for walls. You have an 11-foot wide structure. If you're going to consider something like this, so I'm 6 feet tall, and to my arm is 8. That's not even the length of a bed and a dresser. And while this type of housing is in demand in Washington, D.C., and in certain parts of California, it's not in demand here. So I just want you to think about the things that you're getting ready to approve with PD Amendment 3, because it really limits the town's options for future use of each of these blocks. My opinion is let the developer, Ranch Capital, approach you with a builder. And when they have agreed what they want done with each of these blocks, then let them give you an FDP, and we can have an intelligent conversation around that FDP. But to approve all of this now restricts us and benefits Ranch Capital, who doesn't have a developer to bring to the table at this point. So when they bring the developer, let them bring us an FDP. Thank you. I'm sorry I went so long.
Thank you. Additional comments? Additional public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to staff presentation. We will offer public comment at the February 29th meeting as well.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the third amendment to the Plan Development Zone District Plan that was originally approved in 2012. Stephen Williams, our planner for the town, has a staff presentation, and then we'll have developer presentation after that. Fred Fox is also here for town staff if you have questions for him. Stephen?
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, trustees. Stephen Williams, as introduced already. Agenda item 14 is the third amendment to the third PDA amendment to the Superior Town Center. The applicant has submitted both clouded and clean plan sets that illustrate the proposed changes to each sheet of the plan development, as well as a narrative to clarify those changes. Staff has also provided you with a detailed memo regarding this application, which outlines the major changes and highlights some requests that merit additional consideration by the board. This presentation will provide a broad overview of these various changes that they're proposing. In September 2015, the concept plan was presented to the town board, which focused on 5 primary changes, which remain part of this application today. These changes include shifting the location of the town square, which was previously located here. Now they're locating it right in front of the Boulder Valley Ice Building. They're also proposing to table Main Street between 2 blocks, so between Marshall Road and Superior Drive. That includes eliminating traditional curbs and placing the street at the same grade as the adjacent sidewalk. The third change amendment is relocating the alignment of Creekview Way and shifting this further north. So previously we had development on the north side of the street, and now that development is limited to block 4 here, and the lots and blocks south of Creekview Way have increased in size. Additionally, they're changing the geometries around the town plaza shift, and then you'll also notice the other big change is previously all these blocks and lots within planning area 2 were yellow in color and limited to a residential use. The proposed change now is to change this designation to flex space, which would also allow commercial, office, retail type of uses. Through the course of this review, the applicant also provided 2 exhibits to help clarify these changes, and while they may not be terribly visible at this level, I'll kind of walk you through them. Exhibit A, shown on the left, details the acreages of each lot, block, and tract, and illustrates the proposed changes through this amendment. Staff's memo outlines these adjustments in detail. Primarily, the blocks and parcels surrounding Creekview Way and the town square are proposed to be adjusted to reflect the relocations of each of those aspects, the Creekview Way and town square specifically. This table also conveys that the proposed adjustments to parcel dimensions and configurations are largely confined to planning area 2, with the exception of tracks A and B, which also lie just north of Creekview Way, and that's within planning area 1. Exhibit B on the bottom right was also provided to help illustrate that the 210 by 400 foot athletic field that has been discussed to be included within Tract B1 would still fit given the proposed realignment of Creekview Way. The applicant is also proposing a number of substantive changes to the PD that were not addressed through that original concept plan in September. A handful of edits to the Build 2 setback requirements illustrated on this plan sheet, which is CS 1.2, shown here, are among these changes. To begin, a new setback designation is proposed along the southern boundary of Block 1, Lot 3, and also along the northern boundary of Lot 4. Associated is a note down here, note number 4, that basically changes the designation that was formerly 0 to 15 feet along this block. There was no setback designation along the northern portion of Block 4 previously, but basically it's changing from a 0 to 15 foot setback here to effectively a 0 setback, and that's all pending the Coal Creek floodway study, which would allow it. So that note clarifies that. In addition, proposed updates to the sheet including amending the bold dashed line in planning area 3. Previously, this designation showed an 8-foot setback, and now it's conveyed as being an error originally, but it's now 0 to 8 feet for this setback designation. And the reasoning there is to conform with the residential typologies that have been approved already. And those typologies for planning area 3 currently list both 0 and 4-foot setbacks. So an 8-foot setback that currently is listed wouldn't allow the typologies that were approved. The applicant is also requesting that note 3 be added, and that's for areas of discovery like paseos and courtyards to be exempt from setback requirements. So staff has suggested that this request be modified to exclude the 50% 0 setback requirement, which seemed to be very intentional, and it's for this very bold line here, and it's effectively it's just limited to the planning area 2, the promenade area, the plaza area, and all of Main Street, which basically said that a 50% build-to requirement was required in this area, so that exception wouldn't apply to this specific area. The applicant is also requesting to amend the building mass diagram to clarify that a hotel up to 90 feet in height is allowed in planning area 2 per the associated design guidelines. To this end, the applicant is requesting to add note number 3 that references this design guideline allowance, which is cited on page 1-9 of the design guidelines. Currently, the PD approval's building mass diagram does not permit a building of this height. Rather, as the plan sheet on the left reflects, the mass or the highest height limitation within planning area 2 is 75 feet, and it's limited to this area here as well as this area, these hatched areas that I've circled. The applicant's proposed note would allow consideration of a 90-foot tall hotel anywhere within planning area 2, which is now more distinctly illustrated by these dark lines. So this is all planning area 2. The applicant is also proposing several changes to their allowed residential typologies. The changes on these sheets do not follow the standard clouding system that was employed for the other streets. Rather, the clean sheet existing on PD1 and a redline version of the same sheet were included to reflect the proposed changes. Because the potential impacts of these changes are difficult to assess, staff recommended that either additional detail be provided to adequately assess these changes through a PD review, or that they actually defer many of these changes to final development plans when the details for this review, such as site plans, building elevations, floor plans, and particular parcel locations, would provide staff, planning commission, and the town board the required context to evaluate the change against. The applicant's proposed changes to the sheet do not reflect either of staff's recommended options. Instead, the board is being requested to consider specific typology changes as well as a redistribution of where these typologies may occur within the town center with limited context. In the cover memo, staff has attempted to clarify which change requests can reasonably be considered through this PD amendment without additional context versus the changes that would be better served to be considered through a final development plan. As this existing, so this is the existing sheet here, and this is the proposed changes that they redlined. So as this example relates, Planning Area 2 currently has 6 residential typologies that are allowed, and Planning Area 3 has 5. The proposed change would allow Planning Area 2 to incorporate any of the adopted residential typologies and would add a 6th residential typology to Planning Area 3. Generally speaking, these typologies allowed within Planning Area 2 represent the most dense development that is allowed within the town center, and it's Planning Area 3 in converse allows single-family homes, duplex, triplexes, and then attached townhomes. Among the additional typologies that are proposed to be allowed within Planning Area 2, as an example, is typology G, which is cottages. These are the only single-family detached product that we have. Staff understands that Planning Area 2 is to serve the town core and be more dense in development. The current approval reflects this delineation. Including single-family homes in Planning Area 2 merits careful consideration, considering this change would effectively allow single-family homes to be built next to the 90-foot tall hotel that the applicant is also proposing. Similarly, these changes would allow Planning Area 3 to include a high-density attached multifamily flat, which currently is not allowed. So it's just a matter of what the board wants to see in these areas. I just want to highlight those changes. Unit size ranges, such as 1,000 square foot to 1,500 square foot limits for townhomes, as an example, are proposed to expand for 7 of the 11 residential typologies. More often than not, unit size ranges are proposed to allow for smaller units. This request appears fairly straightforward, and general ranges are proposed to become broader, which would allow more flexibility within product types. The number of units proposed is also proposed to change for 6 typologies, so this is again enlarging clusters. There's a number of clusters that are only allowed right now for 2 to 3 units, and they're proposed to go up to 6. There's some that are allowed for up to 6, and they're proposed to be unlimited, changes like that. These changes could be considered through a PD amendment should larger building clusters be something the board supports. Should these changes be considered, staff suggests that where each typology can occur, be considered in conjunction with that change. Based on what has been submitted to date, staff does not believe the following types of requests can be adequately considered without additional context. These requests include changes to unit dimensions. So in here, we're getting some changes for the width of lots to be decreased in size. This is going down to a 16-foot width. This is going up to a 50-foot depth. The greatest, or the least lot width is 16 feet. The least lot depth is 16 feet, and the greatest lot depth is 100 feet. So those are the kind of changes that we'd prefer to look at with additional context as well as site specificity. The means of parking and sources of access are also proposed to change for 10 of the typologies. Mandated alley access and shared driveway regulations are proposed to be removed from 8 typologies. Setback and building separation requirements are also proposed to be reduced for 6 typologies, and provisions on where outdoor space and how it is accommodated is also proposed to be eliminated in certain typologies. Although the applicant's primary requests center on the changes I just outlined, the direction of this town has been to achieve a complete plan update and eliminate the need for future reviews to reference the collection of 3 PD amendments. Staff envisioned this update would largely involve, beyond the changes that we've kind of discussed, would largely involve technical corrections and map updates, and many of these changes to the remaining plan sheets still largely fall within this umbrella. Staff's memo discusses the proposed changes sheet by sheet, and I've included a few examples here just to outline the type of changes that fall into this more technical correction category. So, basically, the applicant has clouded every change that's proposed. This is an easement that no longer lies in this area, so they're clouding it to show that it's been moved. The 36 bikeway alignment has been changed. We no longer have separate property ownership, which was delineated by these lines. RTD has requested that the transit stop be relocated from here over to here. So those are the type of changes that are reflected on this sheet. I also wanted to provide an example of the street sections, because we have 19 street sections, and every one of them is changing in one way or another. That's not to overwhelm you. Most of them are very technical in nature. The two new street sections that are being introduced are the ones to Main Street, for the tabling to Main Street, and Creekview Way, because that's a new street entirely. The alignment of that hadn't been contemplated yet. But more often than not, the changes are more similar to the ones that are shown in section 7 here. 3 clouds are associated with this change. This section was previously shown on a different page. One cloud note indicates, another one indicates the bike lane clarification on direction has been removed, and that's because these street sections now show which way you're facing when you're looking at them, so that it would have been redundant to also add that note. And then for note number 3, on-street parking was removed as unnecessary because the right-of-way width indicates that you're on the street, so it just shows parking at this point. Lastly, PCE recommended approval of this application based on the conditions listed here. Conditions A and B represent technical type of corrections intended to achieve greater clarity, while conditions C, D, and E were introduced through the Planning Commission hearing that was on January 28th. Condition C would ensure that the block containing the Boulder Valley Ice building, that's block 12, remains part of this application's legal description. Condition D would require that the language, but not limited to, be excluded from the PD's allowed use table, which would limit the PD uses to those specifically listed. And condition E would require that the design guideline supplement be updated in full to reflect the changes proposed through this amendment. And that would include eliminating a note on the residential typology pages that's, I guess, maybe a little misleading. So just to ensure clarity that the design guidelines are updated across the board to reflect the changes proposed through the PD. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have now or
Let's go on to
later
the
on.
developer presentation, and then we'll do questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Randy Goodson with RC Superior. Thank you very much for taking the time to yet again review a PD amendment and to continue to work on Superior Town Center to make it a great place for the town and a place we can all be proud of. I think to start off, we really appreciate the dialogue about this special place. It's a very special place. It's special to us. It's more special to you. Clearly, you live here and have lived here for a very long time, and it's important to have this dialogue and make sure we all understand what we're doing, what's happening, and if there are conflicts, to find solutions to those conflicts. If we ended up with all of the dialogue we've had to date, which has been quite a bit, on different pages when we're doing things, to find a way to come together and to resolve those issues. Perhaps it's not the appropriate time now, and at the direction of the mayor, I'll just give my presentation on PD Amendment 3, but at the appropriate time, I'm happy to talk about any of the other issues that have been raised. I think our application was really well presented by staff. Hopefully, mostly it's what you expected from the meeting a little while ago, at the end of last year. There are a few topics that are probably new to this board, and I'd like to touch on those so that I don't repeat the staff's presentation, which I said I think was excellent. However, if you have any questions at any time, please, I'm happy to address those. I think the issues that you may not have expected related to the residential typologies and the discussion there, and there was a discussion about excluding Block 12. Maybe, what's that about? I know you've seen this in the staff report. I'd like to address that. There's a reference to eliminating this language under the allowed uses, but not limited to, and a reference to the extension of the vested property rights. I think the reference to the vested property rights is It was not something we discussed, but our intent is we have vested property rights with the PD Amendment 1 and as that was modified with PD Amendment 2. And those vested property rights, we're not looking to change those or extend those. We just want to make sure the language is clear that we're just picking up where those vested property rights exist today. And if there's any misunderstanding there or concerns there, we're happy to address that further. I'm going to deal with, I think, what are the easier topics first, and with this, the PC recommendation up here, that's helpful. The exclusion of Block 12, we do not own Block 12, Lot 2. That is owned by another party, Boulder Valley Ice and Indoor Sports, and Block 12, Lot 3. By the way, Block 12 consists now of 5 parcels. Lot 2 has been broken down into 2, A, B, and C. That's all Boulder Valley Ice and Indoor Sports. And then Lot 3 is where is supposed to be their parking, and that's where we have a use agreement with them, much like you'll have a use agreement with the Superior Liquor and the developer up there. And so those parcels are all subject to contracts. And then we're under contract for sale to Superior Medical Office, to Sawtooth Development Group for the Superior Medical Office building on Lot 12, Block 1. And perhaps we can work with your staff and your town attorney to resolve this issue. I just recently, at the end of last week, saw the concern was articulated to me that there would be a concern that if Block 12 was excluded from this PD, that Block 12 might exist without any zoning. And I have to be candid that I don't understand that, because we're not. If Block 12 isn't part of this PD, it's certainly part of the prior PDs. And so maybe there's just some words that can be added here, but we really don't want to include property that we have under contract or that we don't own as part of this PD amendment. And we're not proposing any changes to those properties with this PD amendment. And I think while we hope very much that there aren't any more amendments to the PD, and I think we thought that when we did PD Amendment 2, that we were just fixing a few things. It's a big project, an important project. When better ideas come up, we're going to, whether they come up from citizens or from the town board or town staff or from our team, we're going to talk to you about them and say, hey, does it make sense to put a lot of work into further refining and improving the town center? And so while we don't expect or aren't planning at this point to do another PD amendment, because if we had any other ideas, we would incorporate them here. I would venture that it's probably not unlikely that over the next several years there might be changes to certain blocks here and there. And certainly there'll be a lot more properties that we don't own at that point in time. So we'd like to have a format where we're not precluded from coming back with better ideas or better ways of approaching opportunities for the Superior Town Center. And so hopefully it's okay for us to engage with your town attorney, who we really haven't engaged with on that particular issue related to Block 12, but we don't want to include Block 12 in the PD amendment. We could include, if we needed to, Block 12, Lot 1 for the medical office building, but not all of the other blocks, all of the other lots in Block 12. And then as it relates to the allowed uses, which you'll see referenced here on item D, on the PD that the town board approved in 2012, the PD that you approved, the PD Amendment 1 in 2013, and in fact the PD Amendment 2 in 2014, they all included this language under the allowed uses. And that's been the way the project has been proposed and processed. It's in fact the way our loans are based on these as a form of entitlement. And it appears now that your town staff sort of collectively would like this language removed. We see that as a change to the entitlements that we have, and really a disincentive to coming back and trying to improve the project, a penalty, if you will. And so we're not supportive of that, and I'm not sure that if this or other things that reduce the development potential or the entitlements that we have are imposed as a sort of a fee for the changes that are within the PD, we may not be able to proceed with the PD amendment at all. And so with that, I'd like to go to the residential typologies. Were there any other aspects that you'd like me to touch on? I thought your staff did a great job, and everything. I think everything else was as you expected. But the keyboard, is the keyboard down here? How do we get to that term? To the let's see, how does this one work? I want to go to the PD. The clouded version of the PD. Yep. Sure. Thank you. And as far as talking about the residential typologies, it'll be a little bit of a tag team. You were introduced previously, but I don't think you've met Bill Jenks, the Vice President of Development for Ranch Capital, who is in the process of relocating here so that he can be on site every day. And I think it's his experience, background, and being here locally will be really, really helpful. We're both going to talk about residential typologies because what we're trying to do is keep up with the market and in many cases lead the market when it comes to creating a dense, mixed-use, walkable place. And the bigger changes in the market relate to condominiums are still not coming back. The larger buildings that are typically found in urban areas that create the density of population, of households, people, create the warmth on the street, are not close to coming back. Construction defect law, well, there's hopes that it gets, there would be modifications to that law, that they're not happening, and I don't think there's anything really pending that is close, although it was in prior years. And so there's a number of changes here where we're trying to create the opportunity to bring higher density, really detached or attached housing, but not condominium housing. So townhomes in a variety of formats that are fee simple townhomes, and then high density detached lots. And while staff mentioned their single family homes that we're proposing to be allowed in the town core, planning area 2, the homes that we're contemplating right now are on 40 by 45 foot lots. So the largest housing that we have with the contracts we have and the architecture, the plans we're working on with builders are going to be very expensive, very nice, luxury homes that are detached homes on lots that are just over 1,600 square feet. And we're very excited about this product, and there's elevators in these homes. And so that's the type of housing unit that we're talking about. Specifically, I'll go through each of these. There are, I think, 3 kind of broad categories of the changes in each of these typologies. One is a change to the unit dimension. Another is a elimination of the reference to the parking and or the garage location, and another is the reference to open space. Taking the last 2 first, the design guidelines already reference open space and parking requirements, and the PD precludes us from having driveway access on any of the major streets. So what we have is we're left with interior streets that, that will be alleys, or they might be improved streets with sidewalks that are interior to a block. And so perhaps we can add more clarification, but we're not trying to get the right to put driveways on any of the streets that are shown in the PD. But we do need the garages to access the interior drives that may or may not be alleys within the blocks. And so if that's, sort of every time you hear a reference to an issue, sometimes you hear it a different way. And that occurred to me as Stephen was giving the presentation earlier, just before. But we're not trying to get the right to put driveways or have garages face any of the streets that are shown on the PD. So with that, I think the main thing remaining is a change to the unit dimensions. And in a moment, Bill will go through a PowerPoint of some townhomes smaller than what we're envisioning now. But just to make the point, and actually I think you're an earlier speaker almost made the point for us. There's a really strong trend throughout the nation for high-density townhomes that are fee simple townhomes in many instances. Sometimes they're condos in other states that, you know, where the laws are such and the litigation such that the people just don't really care. So we have townhomes, and there's nothing narrower than 16 feet wide. In the PD, we have a townhome that's 20 feet. In the PD, we had one townhome described that is referenced as 20 by 24 feet wide with varying depths. And we're proposing to take that to 16 feet in many instances, and to add in the depths based upon the work we have, the designs that will be coming into the town shortly. So on this flex apartment over retail, again, part of just addressing the condo issue is we're talking to various owners of buildings that would build a single building that would have retail on the ground floor and residential or office above that. And those would be individual buildings, but they could be as narrow as 16 feet. We'd like to get guidance on this. If some comments have been made that, gee, you know, just wait till we bring a builder in with us and have that builder propose to the board through an FDP process. But, you know, that process is probably, you know, $30,000 to $50,000 of pure at-risk money. And when a builder looks at our design guidelines and sees that they can't do something, or it's not close, it's just very, very far away, then we're not going to get builders to spec that money. So we're, if you're not comfortable with these dimensions, you know, tell us what dimensions you're comfortable with. We want to get as close as we can so that we can market the project and bring builders forward that'll risk their money and come to you with FDPs. On the high-density residential flats, again, these are fee simple. A is fee simple. B, fee simple high-density residential flats, 16 by 45 by 40 feet wide, 25 by 45 feet deep, and that's pretty much the range of dimensions that we're looking for. The Parkside Cluster Duplex Townhome was referenced because with the approved PD, the Parkside was going next to, in between Creekview Way and the park. And now we don't have those units, but we see putting those units in other places. So we just eliminated the word Parkside. Here we see these units ranges, again, replacing the condominium. This is very high-end housing, but smaller square feet. We're looking for a range of 1,200 to 2,500 square feet, and this was stated as 25 feet wide by 26 to 40 feet deep. What we're suggesting is a range of 16 to 25 feet wide by 16 to 50 feet deep. The attached row home, this was identified as 2 to 3 units per building. What we're seeing is in more of the row homes, We have, for example, we have a plan coming forward pretty quickly with Promenade. Promenade is the first block south of, in planning area 3, in between the Village Green and 1 block off of Main Street. It's the block that curves, and we have a plan there. If we put every building, either 2 or 3 townhomes, with the length of that road, it gets pretty monotonous pretty quick. And so we're having a range of 2 to 6 units per building. So we can have some 2-unit buildings, some 3, some 4, 5, 6, and we'll have more of a variation on either side of the road, and it just gives us a much more natural feel as opposed to a real manufactured feel. Again, looking for the lowest unit size was 1,500 square feet. We'd like to have more flexibility to 1,100 to 1,800 square feet. The unit dimensions were 30 by 35. We're asking for 30 pardon me, let me start with width first. I was trying to have the width first all the time. 16 by 28 feet wide. What's in the PD is 25 by 28 feet wide. And then the depth is shown as 30 by 35 feet deep. We're asking for 30 to 50 feet deep. The townhome building with penthouse and the high-density attached building, those, we agree with staff, those are multi-unit buildings. They would be built in some sort of condo format, somehow, some way. Those would come forward. We're not out having unit dimensions. There were unit dimensions shown, but I think it's just better for those buildings, because they're multi-unit buildings, to come forward at FDP. The cottages, they were shown at 1,200 to 2,500 square feet. We're asking for these would be the detached homes, 17 to 3,000 square feet, and they were 18 by 35 feet wide. We're asking for 18 by 45 feet wide. It said varying depths. We can keep the varying depths language if you like. I propose to add some clarification by suggesting 30 by 100 feet deep. On the villas, the unit dimensions shown in the PD, 18 by 30 feet wide. We're asking to go 18 by 40 feet wide, and it was by 50 feet deep. We'd like a range of 30 to 50 feet deep. The urban villas are a range of, the range was 1,200 and 1,900 square feet. We're asking for a range of 1,000 to 2,200 square feet. The unit dimension was 18 to 30 feet wide, and we're keeping that. And it said 40 feet deep. We'd like to have 35 to 45 feet deep. The townhomes were 1,400 square feet to 2,200 square feet. We're proposing 1,100 to 2,200 square feet. They were 20 to 24 feet wide. We're proposing 16 to 28 feet wide. It said varying depths. Again, we can keep the varying depths language if that's your preference, but to give you a reference point, we're looking at 30 to 45 feet deep. The live-work townhomes range 1,600 to 2,000 square feet. We're asking for 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. And with that, let me I'd like to introduce Bill Jenks, who can walk you through some of our exciting concepts with townhomes.
Good evening. First of all, quick introduction, since I haven't formally met any of you yet. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about it. I'm moving out here in 2 weeks, so I'm really honored to be part of the project. I'm new to Ranch Capital, but I am here representing Ranch, and I want you to know that I'm an architect, licensed architect. I'm passionate about good design, and I believe in responsible and sustainable development as a civic duty, and I take it very seriously. So that being said, I'm excited to work with the public and work with all of you to fix any concerns that we have about the project. We all have the same goal of creating a great space here, and I want to help you do that. I have a lot of experience creating successful public spaces, and I want to work with all of you to create a new part of your community that we can all enjoy. So that being said, staff asked us to prepare a couple examples of some narrower unit types just to demonstrate what we were asking for. Ultimately, we're really just asking for a little bit more flexibility in the unit types that are outlined in the PD to Randy's point, so that we can get builders to come into the project and provide those unit types. This is one of the unit types actually being proposed as this is going to come in with the FDP number 2 in roughly 1 month. This shows a variety of unit sizes with the 25-foot and a 24-foot unit on the end, 2 20-foot wide units here, and a 24-foot unit here. So this goes to the 20-foot wide unit that we're talking about. As you can see, very high quality materials, nice stepping back of the architecture and facade. These have great 4th level decks with barbecues and outdoor living space. It's going to be a really nice nice place to live. So then this is going back to some of the earlier comments. We're not actually asking for a 10-foot wide unit. This is just to show you an extreme example of what you can do with a limited amount of space. Our narrowest unit that we're asking for is 16 feet. This is actually a 10-foot wide townhouse that you can see. You can actually do some pretty nice things with a very limited amount of space. Still 3 levels, plenty of living space. This steps up a little bit to a 12-foot wide condo, showing you what that feels like. 12 foot is a pretty standard dimension for a smaller living room. But again, this is smaller than we're actually asking for here. This shows you an example of a plan. This would be a 2-bedroom unit that's actually 13 feet wide. Again, one of those bedrooms could be a loft or a den, and a lot of our units will actually have a 4th level space for additional living space. And then this is just an example of a 15-foot wide townhouse, which is actually pretty similar to what we're proposing with the 16-foot, our narrowest, and shows how that plan works with the garage on the ground floor, living area on the 2nd, and then the bedrooms on the 3rd. So with that, happy to answer any questions and look forward to working with you in the future.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes our presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Why don't we, if you don't mind, touching on the topic of the buffer and kind of go through next steps that you perhaps have been considering and just kind of give us the latest on that, because it's top of people's minds.
Sure. Thank you very much. So not to quibble over terminology, the buffer, the distance is there. It hasn't gone away. There's a slope covering a part of that distance. We are going to come back with a revised grading plan for block 26, and we're going to put back we're proposing to put back 105,000 cubic yards of dirt that would raise the buffer back to its original elevation. And that is something that we expect to be doing in the middle of the year. We need to get the Superior Medical Office building under construction. We need to get the FDP for Block 13 and 25 going, and at that point, we would phase in the work. We can't do the grading until April, based on the thawing of the soil and things like that. And then we need to get Kelly Trucking to come back out here. So my sense is that we would do that in the June-July timeframe.
Is there no way to do it in April or May, like on the early part of summer or late spring, rather than having the residents have to live through another summer of?
Well, it's a lot more expensive to rush it. There's a number of reasons. We need to put our contract out to Kelly and say, when you have an extra crew, because it's not a huge grading job, and if we don't do it right, it's going to cost a lot more money.
Is Kelly the only grading company in Colorado? I mean,
well, we have a contract with Kelly. They know the site. We're confident they're going to give us the best price. Our indications now are they're going to stick to the grading price, the quantity cost that we negotiated for the grading that they've already done, when they can bring crews in and when they have crews available, crews and equipment available.
Okay, I'm really uncomfortable with delaying it that much. I think there's frustration, and I don't know why it's taking so long. I mean, I understand it's winter time, but if April we can do it, why are we waiting until June or July?
There's a number of reasons. The reasons that I mentioned. We also have, we have our budgetary concerns. We need to make sure it's not affecting our peak capital. It's something that we're volunteering to come back and do, and we're going to do it and get it out of the way. We know the town's concerned about it. We know the residents are concerned about it, and we'll do it, absolutely as soon as we can.
Okay, well, I can't be the only one saying, are you comfortable with that, or? I'm not.
What about seeing plans for, there's been some concerns raised about the engineering of, how do you get that amount of dirt to stick on the slope and things like that? In the interim, can we be seeing steps towards, towards the eventual dirt coming back, but see some engineering on how that's going to be done and those sorts of details?
Well, yes, we will be submitting a revised grading plan. Part of the things that I appreciate the concern over time. Our engineer is working on submitting the design, the final designs for Main Street and Superior Drive, so we can bid Main Street and Superior Drive out. And then we're submitting the FDP for Block 13 and 25. We have builders waiting for that. And when we get those two done, then he's going to produce the revised grading permit. Where, as far as the dirt sticking to the slope, we are raising the whole area up about 20 feet. And so we're not, the slope will go back to less than 3 to 1. So right now it's a compacted, it's 3 to 1. And we're able to compact, following all engineering standards and geotechnical recommendations at 3 to 1. I'll bet you when we go back there, it's closer to 8 to 1. When we go back to the natural elevation of the grade previously. So we will be coming in with a revised grading plan and a grading permit for that area.
I don't understand that, because there wasn't a drop off from the buffer down to the lot 26, block 26 before. So now you're saying there's going to be 8 to 1 drop off from the buffer down to lot 26, block 26?
That's my estimate of the natural grade. We're going back to the natural grade.
Okay, but if you don't raise your lot or block 26 more than 20 feet, because you dug out like 50 feet or more, so won't there be a drop off somewhere there between the natural grade of the buffer to down to the, I don't need an answer right now. I'm just saying that that's one of the concerns too, is how will you jump from the restoration of the buffer, which was kind of like this, and then down 20 feet down to your lot, your block 26. That would be something that would have to be taken into account and looked at as we go forward. Saying that, yes, it'll be resolved is good to know, but we have to look at the actual plan to do that. Because you're taking out 50 to 70 feet of dirt there, and to do a 3 to 1 slope. So if you put that slope back to its the buffer back to its natural level, and then you're out there 250 feet, and in the existing elevation is in your PD plan amendment under the 2013 existing, and it doesn't show it dropping off more than like 10 feet, graduated. But so the point for me is that there still seems to be a difference between restoring the buffer back to its natural point and then having a lot dropped down at some level less than what it normally was originally. And you can do whatever you want with your blocks. I said lot, I meant block 26. But just to make the connection and have it smoothly connecting between that without having to put any walls and things like that in would be something I think everybody's interested in taking a look at.
Well, I'm pretty certain that our revised grading plan will come back to the board, and we're happy to present it to you and then talk about it when we submit it.
Okay.
I heard everything you said. So.
Right. And I'm not expecting you to answer precisely right now, but that was a concern about how do you get...
Our calculations, the 105,000 cubic yards, the preliminary plans that we have, indicate, what I've seen is that we're going to be replacing the elevation to its pre-existing graded elevation in that buffer area.
That's great.
Okay. Trustee Pennington.
As long as documents come before us that the public can attend those meetings and see that and create a set of expectations, that's what I'm concerned about. We've got too much rancor in this community over this, and I want absolutely no surprises at the back end. So that public process is really important. But on the residential typologies, I will just speak for myself, and I've lived all over in many different properties. I'm going to find it extremely difficult to play arbiter on widths and depths. But I'm not willing to just roll over on it either, because I think some of them are important to defining our communities. For example, 16-foot widths and the higher density and the whatever. I certainly have something to say on that. But till our next meeting, I'm going to have to be thinking of creative ways. And frankly, a solution is to have it come to us FDP by FDP, so that we can actually, or at least concept plan by concept plan. That's cheaper, before the FDP, to have you and your developers come in front of us concept plan, and we can say like it, don't like it, before you invest the 50 or 75 in a FDP. But have a great facility with all those widths and depths, and we don't up here. So we're going to have to figure out a way to bridge that so we can imagine what it is you're trying to do.
So as far as those 2 points, just to address those, we absolutely want to have the revised grading plan come back to the board. We'd love a very open dialogue. We don't want to fix it again. We want to make sure we're all communicating and agreeing on the what that final area is going to look like. I've said this before, and I'll continue to repeat it. We thought we did that the first time. We didn't communicate well. That's my fault. But I don't want to make that mistake again. I want to be able to have extensive open dialogue, and whatever grading plan we agree upon. So fully in support of that. Again, just to reiterate, I know this is on video. There's been no hiding the ball. There's been no intent to do something that everyone wasn't aware of. We thought everyone was. As it relates to the residential typologies, I completely understand that your concern. I think just through dialogue, we'll have to figure out, what are we comfortable with and what are we not. I'm very skeptical that we will find builders. I'm going to back up just for a moment. The Denver market's a really strong, great housing market. And one of our challenges is we talk to all the great builders in town, and we say, we got this great location. They go, yep, great location. We have this great town. Yep, great town. We'd like you to come build something new that you're not building anywhere else. And they're like, what's that? What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm not available. I'm busy, because they can find land to build. They can go build projects. Everyone's still capital constrained coming out of the cycle. That's why there's not as much housing built. People can only build so much housing. So they're building, what's easy for them and what's cheap for them. And when we ask them to take a risk and to try to innovate a new product that they're not building, and then also to design it and come here when it's not, when there's no indication that the town's receptive to that, just the sketch plans, probably 10 grand, 15 grand. I mean, your park sketch plans were expensive, and then going to the design documentation is super expensive. But just that early sketch plan component is expensive to do. And so if we can all agree and have that dialogue, and I really, really appreciate you all spending your time, and I know you think about things and research things extensively on your own, if you can do that and we can have that dialogue and we can figure out what we're willing to incentivize and to tell builders, pretty strong chance if you come back with something nice in these dimensions, we're going to be receptive, that'd be helpful to us. If you don't want to do that, of course, you don't have to. There's no, that residential typology is not, there's no quid pro quo to the other things that we're doing that are, we think, great for the plan. We think it would be great for the plan, but it's not, we need this or we're going to take our marbles or whatever. So I really hope and appreciate you taking the time to think through those issues and the types of products.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Sorelli had one question. We'll let him have the closing question, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening.
If you could go back to the residential typologies, I think where you were talking about planning area 2 and 3, and I believe, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly or not, but the multi-unit flats, were you saying that you would wait until final development? I think it was ENF or
Yes, it is ENF. Yes, that's correct. The multi-unit flats, we're not proposing a dimension. I think it's helpful to us to take off the dimension more than it is to leave it the way it is, because we see these as bigger buildings. There's things that we're talking about to try to get some of these great buildings built, but showing a dimension of this multi-unit building of 22 by 45 feet deep, this was a particular building type that we thought we could find builders to build, and we've not been successful doing that. I think it's better to remove this reference here to 22 by 45 to say to be shown on FDP, which just doesn't give any right, but it tells the builders when we're marketing to them saying, we're trying to do this multi-unit building. The town's, receptive. It could be 6 to 12 unit buildings, these square feet ranges. Design it however you want to design it, and let's come to the town. This is not giving us rights. All these require FDPs, but in this instance, the opposite is more helpful than as it relates to the specific product types, where it's better to give them a dimension and to say, yeah, if you're within these dimensions, there's receptiveness.
But you're still also asking to put the high-density attached building 6-unit flats into planning area 3. I guess that's the clarification. You're still asking at this time to include that as a typology in planning area 3 as change.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. I wanted to understand that.
Yes.
Okay, we've reached our end for the evening. Just to clarify to everyone, we're going to continue the public hearing and adoption of an ordinance approving the Superior Town Center Plan Development Amendment Number 3, continuing that to a date certain, which is Monday, February 29th.
So I'm sorry, we do need a motion to continue.
Okay.
I apologize.
Let's
Thank
have
you.
a motion to continue.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Williams, second by Trustee Sorelli. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Okay, we are now officially continued to Monday, May 29th. We're going to start at 6 p.m. Monday, February 29th, 6 p.m. Thank you. And we are adjourned for this evening.